All right. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Culture Bomb with Dr. Phoenix, courtesy of YouTube. I am your host, Sigma Jones. My co host and the man of the hour of the night is Dr. Phoenix. First and foremost, we just want to give a shout out to our subscribers. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We truly appreciate the love and support. Hope you all are doing well tonight on this extended holiday break. Tonight will be the last episode for the Culture Bomb of 2021. The next time we do a Culture Bomb episode, it will be in the year 2022. So you all are in for a good podcast because this Culture Bomb, we're going to focus more on the military side. And what things that brothers should consider before they actually go into the military. And my co-host Dr. Phoenix is one who also is a veteran. He's been in the military and he knows his way around the things that he saw, the things that he experienced. So tonight he will definitely be the one to kind of give us some information that I think is very valuable for those who are interested in joining the military, as well as those who may need some more information about it. So, without further notice, let me go ahead and introduce the man of the hour, Dr. Phoenix. How's it going, good sir?
Good evening. How are you? I'm doing well.
That's good. That's good. So, hope
How's my
everybody.
sound? Is my sound okay? I sound nice and clear. Everything's fine.
Yes, sir. You coming in loud and clear.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Please continue.
Oh no, not at all. So, hope you and your family were doing well this holiday break, and definitely looking forward to the information you're going to provide us for this culture bomb in regards to the military side.
Yeah. So you and I talked about this a little over a month ago about doing something to talk. Doing a podcast to talk about military service and what it is versus what it isn't, and who is it really for? Because in my observation over the past year or so, on YouTube, certainly within the Black sector of YouTube. There's a lot of misinformation from Black men on YouTube about what the military is, what it isn't, who is it for, how do you best benefit from military service should you decide to join. And just to make something really clear, what I'm going to talk about tonight isn't necessarily an attack on service members or an attack on the military itself, but it's a realistic view of what you should know going into this. You should never go into military service given what's really at stake here with your eyes closed. Your eyes should be very much open, and you should know exactly what's involved, the risk involved, and because simply put, I mean, to be really nice about it, there's a lot of misinformation. I'll be really nice. I'll say it that way. There's a lot of misinformation about the military going around. So with that said, if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yes, sir. And right on, we're going to start with the first article. So let me first stop the screen and we will bring it up here. All right. So yeah, this is the first article that Dr. Fit is going to start off tonight. And sir, you could definitely go ahead and take us take us to where we need to go.
Yeah, so this article is from Psychology Today. It was posted in January of 2018, so about almost 4 years ago. So I'm going to read off most of it, not all of it, but most of it, but to give you an idea what it's about. So it's titled, Are Military Members the Lowest of Our Low? Separating Misconceptions from Truth. And it starts off by saying, How dumb are people in the military? In a recent news story, Gregory Salcido, who works at a high school in California and served on the city council, referred to military members as the lowest of our low. Presumably, he was referring to education, intelligence, and perhaps socioeconomic status. Is he right? Let's find out. Are military members uneducated? One way to find an answer is to look at education. Let's leave aside military officers who are required to earn a college degree before joining. Big point here, because there's a lot of misinformation on that too. Presumably, offers are not who you have in mind when wondering about the background and quality of military members. And that assumption exists because people who are familiar with military and military service understand that there's a few ways into the officer rank, but the principal requirement is that you have to have a degree. So either you join post undergrad, or maybe even postgraduate program, or even a post professional program such as law, medicine, nursing, something like that. And you join after you've gone through those programs and join the military that route, or you can join as I stated earlier while you're an undergrad as ROTC. And so pretty much just about every major university in this country has some ROTC program. So you're able to join while you're an undergrad. They actually provide you with a stipend and pay your and will contribute to paying part of your tuition while you're in the program. Now, obviously, that's in exchange for military service. You'll be commissioned once you graduate, go into OCS. And the other way is actually just joining straight out of high school and going into one of the military academies like West Point. So again, those military academies function just like any other four-year university. You have to qualify for them. You obviously through ACT, SAT scores, and again, they're actually quite selective. They generally tend to take the highest scoring individuals, typically people in the top 10%. So they're pretty selective. So let's continue here. No need to read that paragraph. So contrary to popular perceptions, America's enlisted troops are not poorly educated. In fact, Pew reports that 98% of the enlisted force has at least a high school diploma. This is compared with 86.7% of the U.S. civilian population aged 95 and older. That's true, because what happens is that during the process, and I've certainly saw this when I joined, was that there were a number of folks who didn't have high school diplomas. Some of them were in the process of getting a GED or something like that. And that the recruiters actually worked with the institutions or wherever they were getting those, where they were going for their GED or getting their high school diploma, whatever organization they were getting it through. The recruiters will work with them to make sure that the recruits were getting this. And in fact, when I was there were actually a few cases of people who actually managed to skate by who didn't have a GED nor a high school education. And in the case of those people, instead of just discharging them, they actually allow them to complete that portion of their education while they're in and continue with their military service. So while that is true, I want to that's a big asterisk, because again, a high school diploma is a basic requirement here. Okay, so again, you're only going to pick the people that have high school diplomas at a bare minimum. So the military typically requires a high school diploma to join. Blah, you guys don't really know that. They have a rule that they cannot consist of more than 10% of individuals who have a GED. So in other words, less than 10% of all recruits cannot have, no more than 10% of all recruits cannot have a GED. So that means 90% of the recruits will have at least a high school diploma. But each branch set its own limits, which is often less than 10%. So yes, that is true. It's not the same across all branches. It's different. Research has found that people who leave high school early drop out of the military at a higher rate than those who graduate. That is often true. One study found that early attrition rates among high school dropouts and those with a GED is 8% higher than for high school graduates. The military spends a lot of money on each recruit. You guys don't need to know all that. This is the big one right here. Another way to measure military members are dumb is cognitive ability, or IQ. Some question the idea of using standardized testing to measure intelligence. Others say these tests matter. The military, universities, and businesses spend vast sums of money researching and designing standardized tests. How do military members stack up against their non-military peers? All military recruits must take the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, ASVAB for short. The ASVAB is essentially an IQ test, correlation to 0.8. The ASVAB predicts SAT scores, correlation to 0.882, which is essentially 82%. For the ACT, the overall correlation is 80% of it correlates to the IQ test. 82% of the ASVAB correlates to the AC, correlates to what predicted SAT scores would be, and approximately 77% correlates to what the ACT scores would be. So 0.77 is just short for 77%. So to qualify, recruits must score higher than roughly 1/3 of all who take the ASVAB. The lowest acceptable percentile to join is 36 for the Air Force, 35 for the Navy, 32 for the Marine Corps, and 31 for the Army. By definition, the worst test taker who makes it into the military still scores higher than 1/3 of his or her peers. The military intentionally slices off the bottom third of test takers, not allowing them to join. moral quandaries aside, this means that the military selects for the upper 2/3 of ASVAB test takers. Another study found that among those who finish high school, about 1 in 4, 23%, do not attain the minimum ASVAB score to join any branch of the military. And I can tell you when I joined, that number was probably quite a bit higher because of all the, I remember my recruit, of all the recruits that he had, I was the only one that actually made it through the process. He had about 6 or 7 he was recruiting at the time. I was the only one that made it through. And I remember the day I took the ASVAB and they got my scores back, he was so impressed with my scores that when some of the other recruits from the other branches saw my scores, oh, they were trying to steal me away from him. Now, I should have actually tipped them up on their offer, but but again, that's water under the bridge now. But the point is that what this suggests is that the military is also somewhat selective as well in the folks that they allow in. Now again, in the early days of the Iraq and Afghanistan war, the military, and this was across all branches, actually lowered those standards. So they were allowing people in who did not necessarily meet those standards. So, but now, over the last 5 or 10 years, as the wars wound down, and certainly as the Iraq war began to wound down, those standards went back up, and in fact, they're even higher than what they were prior to those wars. And so again, what this really says is that the ASVAB is an IQ test. I mean, irrespective of what people think of it, it is an IQ test. Many of the questions that get asked are things that would assume that people should know at that age level and at the appropriate level of education. So there's also empirical research investigating the influence of intelligence on military success. In one study, researchers found that a person's score on an intelligence test, along with his 2-mile run time, were the best predictors of success in infantry training. Now, again, this right here, the 2-mile run time is probably more correlated with Army and Marines, because anyone that's ever been in the Army and Marines, they tell you do a PT test. Part of the PT test is there's 3 categories. One is the push-up, the second is the sit-up, and the last is a 2-mile run. Depending on your age, you fall in a particular category based on your age group, and you have to meet a specific time requirement on that 2-mile run to get full points. Typically, if you were between, I believe, 17 and 24, I believe it was generally under 13 minutes that gave you a full 100 points on the test, because it's a 300-point test. You can get 100 points in each category with, and so I believe it was under that. But when I was in, I was pretty much a PT god. So I can do the 2-mile run in damn near Olympic level time. So, but again, you're young, so they would expect you to be able to do those. You're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They would expect you to be able to handle that stress on your body. And that's the other part of why I wanted to go into this. Or take a study about tank gunners. You might not think a standardized intelligence test will have much effect on their ability to shoot straight, but data shows it does. Replacing a gunner who scored around the 20th percentile or one who scores around the 55th percentile improves the likelihood of hitting a target by 34%. Now, here's the funny thing. There's kind of been a school of thought and discussions over the decades about whether or not the military produces psychopaths. And I'm not saying this tongue in cheek, but I'm saying that this has been a thought process. This has been some discussion. Certainly has happened in certain circles, certain academic circles, but this has certainly been a discussion over the past few decades of whether or not does military, and specifically those who were in combat arms specialties, does it produce people who have more psychopathic tendencies and behavior traits? And again, we typically know that many psychopaths tend to have high levels of IQ. Mm-hmm. And so this is also true even dealing with sociopaths. Many sociopaths tend to have high IQ levels. And so again, the question, do you have a dumb shooter or do you have a smart shooter? And clearly, the military prefers smart shooters, not dumb shooters. So, but I don't want to go through all this, but let's just scroll down to are they poor? In the third paragraph, it says, in a report titled Who Serves in the U.S. Military, the Demographics of Enlisted Troops and Offers from the Heritage Foundation, they found that enlisted military troops disproportionately come from middle class and upper middle class families. So I didn't bother to look at this because and it says, well, I'll get to that in just a second. In fact, 50% of enlisted recruits come from families in the top 40% of income distribution, while only 10% come from the bottom 20%. Now, again, you have to look at what's considered middle class and upper middle class in the U.S. And truth be told, those numbers have been kind of somewhat are not reported correctly. Again, those numbers need to be adjusted given just the inflation and such like that. What would be considered middle class about 10, pretty much poor in many respects, especially given now that we find ourselves living in a world where, you have elevated levels of inflation. And, this has been one of the major issues that the current administration is dealing with. So again, I think these numbers need to be adjusted, which is why I still feel, let me correct that. I still believe that for the most part, enlisted troops tend to represent that bottom 50% of income earning families. So I think those numbers need to be adjusted. So finally, according to the Pentagon, now in the last section, the lowest of our low, finally, according to the Pentagon, 71% of Americans aged 17 to 24 would fail to qualify for military service. The reasons are primarily due to educational, behavioral, criminal, or fitness issues. Now, there was a kind of a landmark article and study that came out of the DoD a few years back discussing that they were running into the issues around 75% of all military recruits failed to meet basic physical fitness and therefore was disqualified from military service. Which again, if you look at the trends of obesity and fitness in this country over the last 20 years, you will see the trend has been definitely towards obesity. And again, this also affects the number of people who will ultimately be able to qualify for military service. And again, we know that education, and this is kind of part of the problem with when we try to qualify or quantify educational fitness, because again, a lot of the education numbers in this country are very heavily skewed. Because we know that the vast majority of people in this country do not even have a bachelor's degree, let alone an associate's.
Yep.
Most people are high school graduates, and that's about the extent of their education. Most folks do not consider secondary education as another means of socioeconomic mobility. And so then this in turn gives people the idea that if you go into the military, because the military look for folks who have at least a high school diploma, that this becomes an issue of socioeconomic mobility. And as we will go on later, as you will see later in this segment, that's not necessarily the case. So let's go to the next article, which I believe is the official ASVAB website. So
yes, sir. Bringing that up right now.
All right. Yeah, so here, I'll bring it up on my screen as well so we can go through this. So yeah, so if you look right here this is the official ASVAB website. So basically this website breaks down the subtests that you take for the ASVAB, and also how each of the service component, how each of the service armed forces calculate how you qualify for certain types of career fields based on a combination of these various scores in the ASVAB subtest. So again, if you can scroll down to the middle section where it says ASVAB subtest, you'll see that each one of the areas you're tested in. So you have general science, arithmetic, reasoning, word knowledge, paragraph comprehension, math knowledge, electronic information, auto information, shop information, mechanical comprehension, and assembling objects. So you kind of see how they're the domain that they, if you look the middle column, you see the description, what it tests, and the furthest column on the right, which is the domain under which each of those tests fall in. So you see the first one is science technical, math, verbal, math, science technical, science technical, science technical, science technical, and the final being assembling of objects, which is spatial reasoning. So so essentially, anybody that's familiar with doing calculus or doing high level calculus, I'm talking about beyond second semester calculus, and you start to think about doing calculus in multiple dimensions. This is an area where, although it's not quite as detailed in that area, but it does test your ability to, can you visualize, can you look at something and visualize what that would look like? And this is very important for a number of career fields, which as you go, if you go back up to the section where it says military jobs, and you'll see how they break it down based on your based on what you correlate, based on the correlation. So you'll see, for example, if you look at the Army's kind of a special case because they kind of take your scores kind of from a little bit of everywhere and add them together to see if you qualify for something. But however, there's another article I want to bring up. Well, I don't know. Let's just skip to that. We're not gonna go there right now.
Okay.
But we're not gonna do that right now. But if you look up, if you see right here where you'll see like the Navy, for example, they have administration, specialized, which this is kind of very broad and general. But the point is that all of these just basically correlate to how they calculate what kind of score you do. So, for example, under the Army section, you'll see that general technical is a combination. How they determine if you're proficient in this is based on a combination of an AR and your VE score. So if you go down to VE or AR, AR if you're arithmetic, reasoning, and VE, even though it's not listed on here, I will tell you what it is, which is a combination of word knowledge and paragraph comprehension. In other words, your ability, and if you took the SAT, ACT, this would just be simply called reading comprehension. So in other words, can you read a passage and pull information out of here? Can you, and anyone that's ever taken the GRE will tell you there's a section on the GRE where you're given words and you have to know the meaning of them based on how they're used in the context of a sentence. And this is what word knowledge tests you on. And so the V is a combination of both word knowledge and paragraph comprehension. That gives you your VE score, and your AR score is your arithmetic reasoning, which is your ability to solve word problems. So that's math. Anyone that's ever, taken a chemistry course or, math course, especially in college, know that, professors love to give you a lot of word problems. And and they don't tell you everything you necessarily need to know. You just have to be able to read the passage and be able to pull as much information out of the passage as you possibly can to solve a given problem.
Very true.
So again, this is some of the things that they look at. So now I wanted to do this as we were talking about it back because, like I said, I knew about this website, but one thing I didn't know, which is that they actually had sample questions. So we might just we go do a few sample questions. So if you click on the sample questions, please, sir. So they have sample questions in all the areas they test. So let's just start with the arithmetic reason. Let's see. I don't think they'd probably give us a lot. So we'll start with the sample questions in there. If you click on that.
Yeah, let me switch screens real quick because it opened up a different screen.
Yep, gotcha. No problem.
Pull that up. Here we go. All right.
Yeah, so let's see how many questions we got here. We got 1, 2, just 4. Oh, that's simple. Okay, so the reason I wanted to do this because I didn't disclose, but you and I were talking about this in the background, which is that when I was an undergrad, I used to be a tutor for Veterans Upward Bounds at my university. So If gentlemen are not familiar with Veterans Upward Bounds, is one of the federally funded programs that is designed to help veterans transition from the military into a university, and so basically from military service into a 4-year academic institution. And a lot of time, and most of the time, many veterans do just fine when they take a college entrance exam on the reading portion, but most veterans do not do well on the math. And
Mm-hmm.
part of that because again, you don't use math quite as frequently as you do reading comprehension. Again, if you're reading regular, if you read the news, you use those things daily. You don't use math not quite as much. But however, um, I will say this much: I used to the courses I used to tutor in, because not only did I tutor help get veterans up to speed, so you're not taking like math 98, math 99, or anything like that. They even for some veterans that just didn't do well across the board, taking English 99 or something like that. I would tutor a number of veterans, but I also did a lot of tutoring for ACT as well as the ASVAB. So the questions that they're asking here, these are pretty standard ASVAB questions. These are also questions that you would see on the ACT and SAT. So
Mm-hmm.
if we let's just start with let's just go through these quick 4 questions and see what we come up with. So the first question is, if a tire of a car rotates at a constant speed of 552 times in 1 minute, how many times will the tire rotate in a half an hour? So I give folks a few minute to try to figure out what they think it is. If you can, post it in the if you know the answer, post it in the chat. I can't see the chat, so maybe you can.
Yeah, I'll. For those who know the answer, we'll just go A for 276, B for 5,520, C for 8,280, and D for 16,560. So just do A, B, C, or D in the chat room.
Yep. So whatever you gentlemen come up with, let's see what you guys come up with, and
And JJ, no calculator.
you can technically. I don't remember if they let you use a calculator. I'm pretty sure they do let you use a calculator on ASVAB. I think
Hmm.
they do. I think they do. I think they do. Um, but yeah, because I think you can use a calculator on ACT, SAT. It's been so long since I've taken that, I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure you can.
Hmm.
Uh, so you guys got to calculate. The calculator isn't the problem. The question is, the problem is, do you understand what it's asking? These are very general math concepts you would learn in high school, and so they're seeing if you can recognize them when you're giving them in a word question.
Yep.
So this one, the first one, I don't know if folks came up with it yet, but the first question is actually the correct answer is 16 is D. It's 16,560. And how do
Yep.
you come up with D? So if you take 552 times in 1 minute, but you're calculating it will the tire rotates at a constant speed of 552 times in 1 minute, but you're calculating that time not over 1 minute, but over in half an hour. In other words, over 30 minutes. So in other words, just take 552 and multiply it by 30, which will give you D.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So now this one, now here's another one. So here we'll do the second one. So 1 in every 9 people in a town vote for party A. All others vote for party B. How many people vote for party B in a town of 810? So let's see if any gentlemen in the chat can figure this one out. And the reason we're doing this because I want gentlemen to have an understanding of some basic math concepts that you would need to know if you're considering this. Again, I don't expect this for every gentleman in chat, because I know a lot of you guys are probably well into your adult years, and military service would probably might not be an issue for you. But for any younger gentleman that might listen to this, that you're around 20 years old, 17 or 18 or something like that, you might consider military service. This is some basic concepts you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone come up with it?
Let's see. Epiphany. F Fion00 said 90. So far, that's the
Actually, that's the
only.
wrong answer, but he's
Yeah.
actually partially correct. So he's partially correct. So what would you do? You would how you do this is that you divide 810 by 9.
Mm-hmm.
You get 90, and then you subtract 90 from 810, which will
Yep.
give you B 720.
Yes, sir.
So so this one is actually the second question is actually cross multiplication. You can do you can set this up in a cross multiplication form.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Sigma, you were a math major in college, so you recognize that.
Yeah.
So
And you know what? This is actually a refresher for me. So.
yeah, so let's look at this one right here, the third one. So a motorcycle costs and the reason I know a lot of this stuff is because in healthcare, believe it or not, you do a lot of calculating. You do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cross multiplication because you have to calculate medication rates and dosages and all that stuff. Because especially if you're dealing with pediatric populations, because it's all based on weight. If you're dealing with pediatric populations, so you're always doing cross multiplication and stuff like that. So you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing something. So so a motorcycle costs $7,250. If it depreciates by 12% per year, how much will it be worth after 1 year? See if you gentlemen can figure this one out.
Let's see. Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't
Whatever
be shy.
answer, whatever answers you got in the chat, just post it and we'll review.
And again, like I said, I'm doing this because I want folks to have a general understanding of these are very general questions, and by many respects, these would be considered very simple questions by the folks who designed the ASVAB. They would consider this general knowledge that you should know as an applicant, as a potential recruit.
All right. So Ephion00, he said D, and then JJ Wilson, he just gave an equation. Just do 0.12 times 7,250.
JJ Wilson set it up, but Epion got the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It is 6,380.
Yep, 380. Yep. And how did you come up with that? As JJ posted, you multiply 7,250 by 12 by 0.12. And you take that answer and you subtract it from 7,250, which gives you 6,380. And for the final question here, a faucet gives 20 gallons of water in 5 seconds. How many gallons does it give in 7 seconds? So this one can have a little bit of an interesting setup, but it's actually deceptively simple.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if you gentlemen can figure this one out.
Wagner.
Because you
Yeah.
wouldn't believe how many college grads would get these questions and don't know this. How many folks in college would get these questions and don't know this.
Right. And Wagner, honestly, learning mathematics is just like learning a foreign language.
It is
Um,
repetition. It's
yes,
all repetition.
all repetition. So let's see. We got some answers coming in. JJ says 28, and our friend Logic says 28.
And they're both correct. And
Yep.
so how do you get 28? Simple. Multiply 20 by 5, which gives you 4. Multiply 4 by 7, which gives you 28.
Yep.
And so again, like I said, these were things that when I would tutor gentlemen and who were coming in, because these are, believe it or not, these are questions you would get asked not just on the ASVAB. These are simple questions you would get asked on a college entrance exam.
Mm-hmm. Believe me, I've seen these a lot on the ACT and the
Yeah,
SAT
yeah.
questions.
And so keep in mind, yes, the ACT, SAT, the was modeled after the ASVAB. So there's some other sections here. I haven't looked at them here and tried any of the questions, but but this is just I did this because I want brothers to have an understanding of just some of the basic knowledge you need to know, especially when it comes to the mathematic component. And while if we go back to the original to the main page here, um, you can see how how you score in various segments. So how what happens is that for this the maximum score you can get on the ASVAB is a 99. So basically, and basically, every 10 points is one standard deviation. And so if you're at 50, that means that if you got 50 on the ASVAB, which in that case you will qualify for any branch of service, 50 means that you score you score right in the mean, right in the median. So meaning you score 50, you score better than 50% of test takers, and you scored worse than 50% of test takers. So you're right in the in the median. And so again, for as we talked about in the previous article, you need a 31 for the Army, 30, I think 35 for the Navy, 36 for the Air Force, whatever. But all of them were in the 30s. Okay. So if you scored around a 50, then you will qualify for entry. But however, for these more specialized jobs within the military, you actually have to have a you actually have to score high in these sub areas of the exam, and those sub areas are combined to the scores in each of those sub areas are combined to see if you qualify for certain job fields, so certain career fields. So whether it's like, let's say healthcare, like me, I was a medic in the U.S. Army. So generally in the Army, I can tell you now for the medic, for anything healthcare related, it's a combination of both your GS, your general science, and your arithmetic reasoning. So basically, the general science is basically a knowledge of physical and biological sciences. I know they have a sample question test for that. We're not going to bother trying that now because our time is limited. But I do want brothers to know that yes, these things are very much important. So if you have an idea, just going through these questions, you should have an idea of some of the things you can ask. And believe me, you can give these same questions to college students right now, and there's a number of them that will not be able to answer these questions. You can give them to current high school students, and they wouldn't know how to answer these questions as well. So, but most applicants tend to score somewhere around that 40 to 50 range for the ASVAB. Now, again, if you have a GED going into the military, you have to score at least a 50 on the ASVAB to qualify. In case if anyone didn't know, everyone else you score as long as you score whatever the branch of service you're looking to go into. As long as you score whatever their cutoff number is, you're good. But for folks who have GEDs, you across the board for all branches, you have to score 50. So, all right, sir, let's move on to the next one.
All right.
And this one is, I think the next one coming up is the military.com. So everyone's familiar with military.com. This is pretty much your official, this is your principal, this is your go-to military website for all the military news. So everything that's going on in the military. So let's click on this one here. So basically, this kind of explains what I was talking about just a few minutes ago about, now this is coincides with the Army, but you will see that it's not much different. There's negligible differences across all branches. So as you can see, it breaks down what each of the different subtests or subject areas of the ASVAB are, which we've already talked about that. And so if you look at the Army, so they have, like, for folks who are clerical, you need BE, AR, and MK. So MK is mathematics knowledge. AR is the arithmetic reasoning, and V is what I told you earlier, which is the combination of both word knowledge and paragraph comprehension. So the reason we wanted to do this because the areas that many Black men have claimed on YouTube that they're interested in is more the electronics area, surveillance and communication, stuff like this. as you can see, a lot of electronics, you generally see you have a combination of GS. If you go down the Army line scores, go back up a little bit. Sorry about that. Yeah, you kind of see how each of these kind of how they calculate the scores to qualify those specific areas. But if we just scroll down, you can scroll back down to the individual job titles. So let's just look at a few of them here, so brothers can get a good example. So I don't know. Let's look at geospatial engineer. So if people are not familiar with this, these are your folks. These are your cartographers. A lot of these folks are folks who create maps. So if you look, you'll see a GT of 100 and an ST of 100. So remember, GT is your general technical, and your ST is your skilled technical. And so you see that the minimal score you have to get in that area is 100 in both to even qualify for this job. So let's look at this. Let's look at a few others here. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find some related to computer IT related stuff, because I know this is a big.
Here's
big
one avionics mechanic. This is kind of one that works with like the avionics within the aircraft, as far as like the technical stuff. You know, not just fixing the plane, but actually dealing with the control aspects and all. Looks like for this mechanic, you got to have an EL score of 93.
Yeah, so the EL is electronics. So again, why is this important? Because if you know you want to qualify for a particular job field, then you need to know what are the scores you need to qualify for these jobs. So therefore, you know which sections of the ASVAB you need to be micro targeting to make sure you do your absolute best in. Now, see, this is what the other Negroes ain't gonna tell you, but I'm telling you that, because I'm pretty sure most black males have never had the ASVAB broken down to them the way I'm breaking this down.
Now here's something for IT: Cyber Network Defender. This sounds like it's something for like security IT. You need a GT score of 105 and an ST score of 105.
Yeah, so general technical, skill technical, both 105. If you go up a few ranks up, you'll see cyber operations specialist. GT is 17C. So if you have 17 Charlie.
Oh, here we go.
Yep. So if you look, you'll see GT 110, ST 112. Pretty high. I mean, all of these is pretty high. Once you start getting into that 100 range, those are pretty high scores. Those are very few people are going to score in that range. Most folks are going to score somewhere in that 80 to 90.
Well, even here, information technology specialist 25B.
Yeah.
You need a skills trade score of at least 95.
Yeah. So if we keep going down, microwave system operator maintainer 25 Papa. So EL score, electronics, electronic EL is electronic something. Electronics, excuse me. You need what's that, a
107.
107, yeah. So I mean, again, you're starting to see where a lot of these are very you need to score pretty high on this exam to even qualify for this. So let's look at another area. Intel analyst, 35 Foxtrot. So you need a skilled technical score of 101. And right below it, geospatial intelligence imagery expert, another cartographer. You're using computer systems to map out images. So here you go. You need a skilled technical score 101, pretty high score. Counterintelligence, right below that, a ST score 101. Human intelligence collector. This is This is your lab folks. These are a lot of your lab folks, your forensic folks. 107. Here you
Ooh,
go.
look at this. Cryptologic linguist. This is
Yeah,
for the cryptology. You
I
need,
knew I knew a couple folks that did this, and they were all Asian.
I mean,
Every
I'm just looking at this. You need a score, ST score of 91 and a D lab score of 107.
Yeah, yeah. And okay, let's go down to sort of my area where I was in the healthcare medical area, medical arena. So if you go down to 68 alpha, because basically all your 68 series, those are all your healthcare related, all your medical healthcare related specialties in the army. So we start with 68 alpha, biomedical equipment specialist. This will be akin to more of your biomedical engineer or biomedical engineering technician. What do you need? Electronic score of 107.
Hmm.
Orthopedic specialist, skilled technical 101. General technical 107. Practical nursing specialist, skilled technical 101. GT 107. Operating room specialist 91, ST of 91. Dental specialist, ST of 91. Physical therapy specialist 101. GT 107. What's this? Patient administration? Not so much. Medical laboratory specialist. These are your lab techs. The ST score 68 kilo, excuse me. ST score 106. Okay. Let's go down, look at a few others. Cardiovascular specialist. ST score 68 uh, uh 68 November, excuse me. ST score 101, GT of 107. And right below that, 68 Papa, your radiologist specialists, which are your X-ray techs. I knew quite a few folks that were X-ray techs back in my days. So a ST score 106, a pharmacy specialist, ST score 95, preventive medicine specialist, 68 Sierra, ST score 101. So here you go, ear, nose, throat specialist, ST score 101, GT score 107. The 68 uh, 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 the 68 U's, these guys work a lot with your ENT docs, your ear, nose, and throat docs, are also known as your otolaryngologist. You have your respiratory specialist, 102, ST 102, combat medic. This was my arena. I was a 68 whiskey, ST 101, GT 107. So again, you have to, as you can see, for a lot of these very technical jobs, you have to be in the upper 10 to 5% of test takers.
Yeah. I'm looking, the average score just in the medical side is minimum 100.
Yeah,
Bare minimum
yeah.
100.
And again, I mean, as you can see, all of the technical jobs, the medical jobs, I mean, all of them, they require relatively high scores. So again, if we know that many black males are coming out of high school that are woefully unprepared, which is why I hypothesize you see so many black males just saying they don't even want to do college because they know that they're not academically ready for the rigors of this. And again, a lot of these careers dovetail into civilian life and to
Mm-hmm.
further specialization, which requires even more education and more testing. Because again, for example, if you were a medic like I was, there are pathways into PA school, pathways into medical school. Unfortunately for me, I did not figure that out until after I got out, which by that time really didn't make much of a difference for me anyway. But the point is that again, many of these careers, most of these career fields in these technical and biomedical areas tend to dovetail into other more advanced careers that require advanced levels of education and such. And so, yes, these careers definitely, if you can get into them, they set you up for further success, assuming you take advantage of what's while you're in those MOSs. So we can go to the next article here.
All right. Before we go, I noticed up at the top There was something that says U.S. Army Commission Officer candidate needs a GT of 110.
Tell me
That's
again.
interesting. For 09 Salvo, it said U.S. Army Commission Officer candidate.
Oh yeah,
You need a
OCS, yeah.
Yep, you need a GT score of 110. I find that interesting.
Yeah, and so and this is the fundamental issue. Again, the folks that are going to be able to score that typically are folks who, again, there's a few ways to become an officer, not just in the Army, but across all branches. Now, if you look right below it, warrant officer is only in the Army, and warrant officers are specialized, what they call specialized technical experts. These are your Apache pilots, your Black Hawk pilots. These are folks who are in very specialized career fields. So usually, pretty much all your helicopter pilots, no matter whether they're flying Black Hawks, Apaches, whatever, they're all warrant officers. And so these folks are considered the experts in that particular area. So I believe there's 5 branches for warrant officer, if I remember correctly, in the Army. But yeah, but just want to bring that up. But as you can see, yes, you can go from enlisted to officer, but yes, that's a very difficult path. I'll be honest with you. That's a path that the vast majority of people are not going to do. In fact, the longer you're in enlisted, the less likely it is you're going to be able to go officer, which is why it's in your best interest to go officer from the outset. So, but as you can see, those GT scores again. So the folks that are scoring in that 100 plus range for these jobs, these technical jobs or whatever, as you can see, again, these are jobs that, again, I mean, there's little variability between what all the branches are requiring you to have in these relative in these for scores in these particular fields or whatever. They call them different things, but for the most part, there's no wild deviations in the scores you need for the most part. So again, what that really means is that the military, yes, while it may seem on paper, at least on the surface, that yeah, everyone, as long as you can do the bare minimum, you can get in. Yeah, but the jobs that really matter and that really make a difference and that will probably really propel you forward in your life, you need to be in that upper 10% of test takers. So yeah, here's the other one right here. Let's do this one here. So yeah, this one guys might get mad at me on this one because yeah, because I hear a lot of guys talking about using their VA benefits and you get all these VA benefits military service. I've said this previously, and because this was an area I dealt with specifically when I got out of the military and I went back to my hometown, Chicago, for a brief period, and I did a lot of volunteer work at the local VA there. So anyone's from Chicago, you probably know the Jesse Brown VA, which is a block down the street from the Cook County Hospital. Also, right across the street from University of Illinois at Chicago's Department of School of Nursing and Medical School and School of Dentistry, as well as across the street from Rush University School of Medicine. So they call that whole little area the medical district. In fact, if you go a couple blocks down, the FBI regional office is right down the street as well. So the point of what I'm getting at here is that I specifically volunteered in an area, again, because being a millennial, I'm a Iraq War veteran because I was deployed to Iraq, was a medic there, all of that. And what became a problem was something that I noticed almost immediately when I got out, which was that you had such low utilization of VA services and benefits from veterans. So again, once you leave the military, all of your information actually gets sent over to the VA. So they send over your any medical records you have, anything, all this stuff gets sent over to the VA. So the VA governs what happens to you once you get outside of active duty military. So, but the problem is that for many veterans, and this is very true of Black veterans, very few actually utilize their services. Whether it was the educational benefits, healthcare related stuff, although I would argue the VA healthcare isn't the greatest, but if you don't have insurance, it's better than nothing. I kind of put that in the quotation mark. So, so if you scroll down to page 22, sir, up here. So yeah, well, actually, go this next page down, which is 20.
Oh yeah.
No, it's not. No, it's 23. It's 23.
Okay.
Page 23. I'm sorry, that was my fault. Sorry about that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, page 23. So yeah. Is it 23 for you, or is it? Because on my, which one do we have up? Do we have up the right one here?
Yeah, this is the Minority Report.
Okay, keep scrolling down. Keep scrolling down.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, it's 23. It's page 23. Is at the all the page numbers at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Yeah, right there we go. Page 20. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this was done back in. So this was a projection of the growth of what is considered minority veterans from 2014 into 2043. And so again, this data, before people start to ask stupid ass questions about where they get this data from, they got this data from the U.S. Census. Okay, before people start asking stupid ass questions. So I'm just gonna let you know right now. This is what they got. But again, this is from the VA.gov, so this is an official government institution. Okay, and because anyway, you're a veteran, you go into the VA system anyway once you leave military service, so they already know what you are. Yeah, it's not like they don't have your fingerprints and stuff on record and all that stuff. So go ahead.
I was going to say, it even says at the bottom, source Department of Veteran Affairs, Office of Enterprise Integration, Veterans Population Projection Model 2014, prepared by the National Center for Veterans Analysis and Status.
Yes. So if you look, now again, this goes back to some of the discussions we've had privately where we talked about sort of the fall of Black folks and the rise of the Latinos. And as you can see, even among veteran populations, you can see similar trends. Almost by the same slope, if you will, as the Black veteran population falls, the Latino population increases by. So you can see this is a measure from 2014 all the way into 2043. So right now they're projecting around 2043 for there to be about 2,226,000 Black veterans versus 2,055,000 Latino veterans. And again, here's some of the other groups, two or more races. So these are what we would traditionally call your mixed groups, your mixed ethnic groups. Asians, you see a pretty interesting increase for Asians. At AIAN, I believe is American. Is that American Indian? I believe. I think that might be American Indian. I believe. But you kind of see a decline there, and I'm not sure what this other abbreviation is here for this group, but that is kind of negligible for the most part. But the most important part is that you should be able to recognize that they're projecting a pretty marked decline in Black veterans over the next 30 years or so, while simultaneously they're expecting to see a pretty decent increase in the number of Latino veterans, which kind of coincides to what we were talking about, what we talked about in previous conversations. So if you scroll down here to the next page, I'm sorry, page 24. Yeah, you see this line graph here. So you're seeing that the number of minority veterans is expected obviously to increase. However, the total number of veterans are actually projected to decrease over a 30-year period. So just something to keep in mind. Nothing nothing that we're not expecting to see given what's going on right now. So if we go down to page 25, it kind of breaks it down. There's a bar graph right here on page 25 that breaks down which period of military service many of your minority veterans are coming from. So you can see the biggest group is actually Vietnam War era, which that's a lot of your Black veterans. Many of your Vietnam War era veterans are Black. And many of these folks will be in their 60s and 70s now. And then the next largest group would be the post 9/11, which would be myself. That would include myself, and so you see that's about 24.8% of veterans. And then after that, the next are peacetime only veterans. So basically, these are veterans that never deployed, so they were just they were veterans during a peacetime environment, so there weren't any conflicts, anything like that going on. And probably the interesting one, you see that this is in 2014. So about 7 years ago almost, you'll see that that for World War II veterans, they're only about 1.9%. We'll just say 2% here. The Korean War, 4.9%, about 5%. We'll just say 5%. And you'll see that number is significantly smaller, obviously, because many of the World War II veterans have died off. There are very few left. Years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting a number of Tuskegee Airmen, and it's actually I actually had some very good conversations with them. That was actually talking about a walking history lesson. I'll put it that way. That was some very good conversations I had with those gentlemen. And a lot of Korean War veterans, many of them are still alive. Actually, I know a pharmacist that's a Korean War veteran. He's in his 80s, but yeah, he was a brother. He's a pharmacist, became a pharmacist at a time where you really didn't see Black pharmacists. And ironically enough, he was a brother that was married to an Italian woman. And he was a Korean War veteran. So go figure. So go down to, if we go down to page 26, there's another bar graph here. So this graph breaks down the racial and ethnic distribution of minorities by veteran status in 2014. As you can see, among all listed minority groups, Black folks by far consist of the largest group of veterans, 52%. They're 52% of the total minority veteran population. And as you can see, for non-veterans, they're about 32% versus 46% for Hispanics and 15% for Asians. And so some of the other ones, they're not really, I wouldn't really consider those. But the big group here, the big ones, the two big ones here that stand out are the Hispanic and Black and Black Americans. So as you can see, a significant portion of what would be considered minority veterans are Black, more than half. So this kind of gives you an idea that, yeah, a lot of Black men went into the military. So this kind of breaks it down by gender. This is not to be, there's nothing surprising here. We expect most of the veterans to be men. So yeah, that's not really surprising. I wouldn't dwell on that as much. Now, here's the thing. Now, if you go down to page 28, there's a bar graph that talks about age distribution of minorities. So as you can see, the largest group of veterans, believe it or not, are between 45 to 54 years of age. Well, I take that back, excuse me, between 55 to 64 years of age. And that group is principally a lot of your Gulf War era veterans. So those guys would be in their 50s and stuff like that now. And in fact, they would consist of the largest group of veterans right now, which would be the Gulf War era veterans. So as you can see, for folks, so your millennial groups would be from 17, be roughly about 24 to around 40 years of age. And, for them, you can kind of take these two numbers together, but they wouldn't be necessarily accurate. But to give you an idea, you can kind of see that they are also they will be a growing number in the coming years. This number will certainly increase for sure. So, but the reason these numbers are lower for these groups right here is because most of these folks are still on duty, still on active duty, and so many of them have not necessarily left service, and many of them are still in their 20s, so might be just starting out their military career. So here's the big one that kind of gets overlooked in this conversation: marriage.
Oh boy.
So yeah, here's the big one that gets overlooked: marriage. So we're looking at the age distribution percentage of minorities who are currently married by veteran status. So if we see for veterans, you have roughly, so for veterans between 19 and 24 years of age, you'll see that only 1.5% of them are married. From 25 to 34, about 9%. From 35 to 44, 14%. From 45 to 54 years old, this about 19.9%, we'll just say 20% here. From 55 to 64, 22%. And 65 to 74 would be 20%. And then as you see, that number starts to go down because now you're starting to get into your Korean War era veterans as well as your World War II veterans. As we know, many of those folks and most of them have already moved on and have already passed away. So that's why those numbers will be lower. But as you can see, the largest group is actually the 55 to 64 years of age, with the second largest being 65 to 74, which are your Gen Xers and your Boomers. And again, and you're also looking too at 45 to 54 years old. These are also your Gen Xers. These are your Gen Xers on the younger end of the scale. You're looking at about 20% for them. Now, the group that ironically have some of the smaller numbers are obviously your millennials and your Zs, which will reflect current trends that we see in the civilian world as well. So. Now again, this is all for age distribution percentage of minorities who are currently divorced by veteran status. So this is on the next page 30. So this is grouping all minority groups, and this includes black folks as well as Latinos and everyone else that will be considered minorities. So if you look here, I think the two big takeaways from this is that your group with the group with the highest percentages who are divorced are between 55 and 64. And secondly, right on their heels is between 45 and 54 years of age. Now, what would that mean? It means a number of things, but it also will explain some of the chicanery we see on the Black YouTube side of things, where a lot of the drama or conversations around marriage and women seem to be propagated by guys in that 45 to 60-year-old group. Now, these are minorities. Again, this is not just Black folks lumped in. This is not just Black folks exclusively in here. But again, you're seeing sort of some, not necessarily correlation, but you're seeing some striking trends, if you will, that some of the biggest purveyors of conversations about Black marriage and Black male and female relationships are coming from guys who are that Gen X baby boomer population. And as you can see, they even in the military, they're represented as the highest group of divorcees. Now, again, if you're looking at the folks under 44, you're seeing that though only about 15% of them are divorced, and even less under 25 to 34, which is 8.5%. But that will also account for the fact too that fewer of them are getting married as well. So So if we go down to page 32, we're not gonna go through all this. There are just a few I wanted to hit because I just wanted to because there's this pervasive idea among Black males that certainly on YouTube and certainly I've heard this discussed that, oh, well, if you just barely made it out of high school, you can go into the military and make some of yourself. And it doesn't quite work that way. Because as we saw with the ASVAB article, that, yeah, it really does matter what you score on the ASVAB test. It will either make or break your career, or either you will start at the bottom and you never get to the top, or you start somewhere in the middle and maybe get to the top. But at the end of the day, attaining higher levels of education more often than not correlate with obviously greater socioeconomic status. So I will read this little quick paragraph above this bar graph here on 32, which is military enlistment requirements stipulate that recruits must have a high school diploma or GED. By default, this means veterans will have a higher educational attainment than non-veteran higher educational attainment overall than non-veterans has. Currently, about 13.1% of the general U.S. population aged 18 and older has not received a high school diploma, and 28% has a high school diploma as their highest level of attainment. In 2014, 34.7% of all minority veterans had a high school diploma or less as their highest level of educational attainment, compared with 51.8% of minority non-veterans. Another striking difference is that educational attainment for minorities by veteran status is the percentage that has completed some college but not a four-year degree. About a third more minority veterans had completed some college compared with minority non-veterans at 42.7%, compared to 28.3% respectively. This could suggest that many minority veterans are in the process of completing their degrees, or that they took advantage of tuition assistance or other educational benefits. Now, the problem with that is that because they lump Black males, and I'm targeting this specifically at Black males, because Black males get lumped into the whole of this graph here, it doesn't really account for exactly what a Black male is doing. So you kind of get lumped. So we know that you're seeing more and more minorities go into the military, because one, for a lot of immigrants, one of the best ways to get citizenship in this country is military service. It is by far probably for an immigrant the best way in this country to get citizenship. And many of them are already coming from their respective home countries with degrees, although they're in many respects they may or may not be accepted, but nonetheless, they're coming. You're not typically getting you're getting those that aren't as educated, but you are going to get some that are educated. But however, what this really suggests is that, which is what I've seen over the years, and certainly something that I've experienced dealing with a lot of veterans, is that they start something but never finish it, which goes back to conversations you and I were having a while back about why do you go to college? Why is going to college important? Why do recruiters like to see people who've gone to college? Despite all of the chicanery and all of the talk on social media and YouTube about certificates, the reason recruiters like to see folks with degrees because it shows that you started something and completed it. No one doesn't like someone who does something halfway. No one. But that's really the takeaway from this for the most part. So let's just go to the next one. There's really no major takeaway. So look at this.
Now this is interesting.
Yes. This is the interesting. Age distribution of percentage of minorities with a bachelor's degree or higher by veteran status in 2014. Now, again, this is about 7 years old. So, again, I'm sure this will be updated. Probably, if it hasn't already been updated, probably will be updated soon enough. But let's just look at the ages that really matter. I'm going to I'm going to cut this off at around 45. So if you look, your group, your age group with the highest percentage of bachelor's degrees are actually between 45 and 54 years of age. So these will be your Gen Xers. Gen Xers may be some of the younger boomers to an extent, but pretty much your Gen X. So if you look here, you'll see they're at 22.2%. But let's just kind of go down in age. Let's look at the group from 35 to 44 years of age. That's about 19%. So, but then you go to around 25 to 34. That is 11.3%. Gotta forgive me, neighbors here got really loud cars. So,
Oh no, we're
yeah.
only hearing your feedback, so it's good.
Okay. So if we look here between 17 and 24 years of age, less than 1%, a half of a percent of minority veterans have a bachelor's degree. So again, this will reflect a lot of the rhetoric we've been seeing online and on social media, certainly on YouTube. And again, the problem with this suggests that there's clearly seems to be a generational divide between those who actually think college is something necessary and you should have it versus those who don't. Now again, when you're looking at folks under that 44 years of age, you're looking at the really young Gen Xers and obviously millennials and Zs. And so again, as you see the trends, if you're going from right to left, you will see that starting from 45 all the way down, 45 years of age down to 17 years of age, mm-hmm. you're seeing that number significantly decreases. And again, this will correlate with the fact that many folks and many Black males believe that, you don't need a degree to do well, and to an extent that may be true for certain folks. But as you can see, when you have bachelor's degrees, and there's something I'm going to put up later that show you the actual pay. You can see the calculator in real time what the pay is between enlisted and officers, and you're gonna see it in real time what the pay difference really is, mm-hmm. and why those degrees are important. But okay, but what do you think of this, Sigma?
Definitely, the data is interesting. I'm even looking at the red for non-veterans. And as you can see, in comparison to the veterans, the number as it starts, it peaks at 25 to 34, and then it gradually decreases over time. Now, give or take, obviously, as you go up the age, there's very few people that have a bachelor's degree. But in comparison to those who are veterans, it's pretty striking.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the military is often used to supplement the lack of an education, mm-hmm. to put it quite simply. And what we're finding out is that it just doesn't work. It is not really going to work, because I mean, especially when you look at the starkest difference is when you look at the group between 25 and 34 years of age. And even from the 35 to 44 years of age. So these are sort of your millennials somewhere in the middle of the path and somewhere later into the path, later into those millennial years versus your younger Gen Xers. And you're seeing that, 25% of non-veterans, 25.5% of non-veterans from 35 to 44 have a bachelor's degree. 27.2% of non-veterans between 25 and 34 years of age have a bachelor's degree versus 11.3. That is almost 3 times.
Right.
And again, this, and then if you look right here from 17 to 24, you're seeing 6.2% of folks in that age range having non-veterans having bachelor's degree, and so you're looking at a rate of at least about Yeah, about 7 to 8 times over, greater than that, of folks from 17 to 24 who have a bachelor's degree. I mean, and this would most certainly suggest that, again, folks who are not who are not really planning out their life well are thinking that the military is a jobs program. And the military is not a jobs program. It really isn't. The military, Uncle Sam is going to get what he's going to get out of you. So despite the rhetoric out here, folks telling you what the military can and can't make you do, I suggest you go read that. If you're thinking about joining the military, I suggest, or you're already in the military, I suggest you go read your contract again. And if you join the military, you better look over that contract with a fine-tooth comb, because the moment you sign it and the moment they swear you in, your ass belongs to Uncle Sam.
Right. And also keep in mind, the rules of the civilians does not necessarily mean you have to go through the same rules once you're in the military. Things change once you sign off on that contract.
The moment you sign up for the military, you're already in the military. You're governed by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ for short. Okay. So, but there's something else here. Now, there's some other stuff that they listed here, but there is something I do want to talk about. That if you go to the last paragraph on page 33, it says a small but growing body of literature has suggested that recent veterans of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq face greater risk of unemployment than previous generations of veterans. Post 9/11 minority veterans in 2014 had a 41% higher risk of unemployment than minorities that served pre 9/11. 76% more than the minorities that served in the Vietnam era, and 20% higher than those that served during peacetime only periods. The risk for unemployment for post 9/11 minority veterans was calculated by producing the ration of the percentage of unemployed post 9/11 veterans, 7.2%, to the percentage of unemployed minority veterans in other periods of I assume they meant service, 5.1, 4.1, and 6.0 for pre-9/11 veterans, Vietnam era, and peacetime only, respectively. Ratios higher than 1.1 indicate that post-9/11 veterans are at a higher risk compared to minority veterans who served in other periods. In 2014, minority veterans were at an 18% lower risk of unemployment than their non-veteran counterparts. Minority veterans have a 44% higher risk of unemployment than non-minority veterans. Employed minority veterans were more likely to work year-round, 50 to 52 weeks, and full-time 35 hours or more a week than minority veterans, 80.9% compared to 68.2% respectively. The median earnings for minority veterans in 2014 who worked year-round and full-time were $47,941 for veterans and $34,907 for non-veterans.
Very interesting.
But it gets even more interesting. So if we on page 34, if you go to the section where it says occupation, but if you go to that second paragraph, that middle paragraph right here. Mm-hmm. So minority veterans and non-veterans differ in the specific kinds of work they do in their jobs. In 2014, almost 1/3 of all minority veterans, 33.8%, worked in management, professional, or other related occupations, with 28.7% of minority non-veterans. Of the top 10 occupations of minority veterans, 3 were in the services category, 2 of which were in protective service occupation, police officers, security guards, and correctional officers, and 1 in maid service. 3 were in sales field, retail sales, supervisors of retail workers. 2 were in transportation, drivers, sales workers, and truck drivers, laborers, and freight, stock, and material movers, and 1 in the management. For employed minorities, non-veterans, 4 of the top 10 occupations were in service occupations: nursing, food service, maids, and janitorial services. 2 were in sales, cashier, retail sales, 2 in office, occupation, secretaries, and customer service representatives, 1 in transportation, driver sales workers, truck drivers, and 1 in management. So it says 17% of minority veterans work in production and transportation occupations, compared with 14.5% of minority non-veterans. This category includes jobs such as mechanics, freight handlers, and payroll clerks. Minority veterans are less likely to work in service and sales and office occupation than non-minority veterans. Let's see, 18% of minority veterans work in service occupations, compared with 24.0% of minority non-veterans. Service occupations include healthcare professionals, fire, law enforcement, and food service workers. 19% of minority veterans worked in sales and office occupations, compared with 23.1% of non-veteran minorities. Sales and office categories includes jobs such as cashiers, salespeople, receptionists, office clerks, and mail carriers. Okay, now this is the interesting one right here on page 35. So this one is about poverty among veterans and minority veterans. So again, keep in mind, Black folks are grouped in this larger cohort here. The poverty rate shows the proportion of people with incomes below a specific poverty threshold during a given year. Poverty thresholds vary by family size and composition to determine who is living in poverty. The poverty universe is a subset of the total population and excludes those living in institutional group quarters, example given, nursing homes and prisons, and those living in college dormitories and military barracks. Overall, minority veterans are less likely than minority non-veterans to be living in poverty. In 2014, 10.9% of all minority veterans and 20.9% of all minority non-veterans had household incomes below poverty. Figure 11 shows that poverty rates were highest for minorities in the youngest age group, 15.5% of veterans and 28.2% for non-veterans, and those 85 years and older, 12.8% for veterans and 22.7% for non-veterans. Minority veterans are also twice as likely to live in poverty as non-minority veterans, 10.9% and 6% respectively. Poverty rates were highest among, I think this is American Indian, Asian American, Asian natives or whatever. American natives or whatever. 14% and 2 or more races, and African Americans were 12.7%. So as you can see, Black folks had the second highest, right after the American Indians. So as you can see in the graph below on page 35, it breaks it down in the age groups. So you can see the poverty rate. So for veterans between 17 and 24, it's about 15.5%. Versus their non-veteran peers are at 28.2%. So again, this is the age group where we see the highest rates of poverty, which will correlate with what we see obviously in civilian world, but also more importantly, when you start to look at when you start to look at the ages in which people have children, specifically females, ages in which females have children. And again, the younger you are, the more likely it is that you will be impoverished or you will live in poverty if you have children young. So again, those 17 to 24, those are your prime college years. Versus those, and if you look at the group between 25 and 34, you're seeing that poverty rate begins to go down a bit. And so again, these are folks who are starting to get a bit more established. And so that will reflect that number. But then as you go into the 35 to 44 years of age range, you're seeing that number decreases even more. Not by a whole lot, but reasonably modest decrease. And it starts to tick back up as people enter into their middle age years, and then it starts to tick down for non-veterans in that 65 to 80 years of age. And that's because those are your Vietnam era veterans, your Vietnam era and some of your Korean War veterans. And part of that reason is because, believe it or not, it was the Vietnam War era veterans who have gotten the most benefits from the VA. And most of the programs in the VA tended to target Vietnam War veterans, and for a number of reasons. One, because that veteran population had a high likelihood of being addicted to drugs, specifically heroin and opioids. Many had a number of chronic diseases, many had hepatitis, a number of issues that would allow them, that the VA specifically had to target this population because of the period of time in which they served. They were more likely to develop some of these conditions. So that would explain some of that. But the point is that you're seeing that for young folks, the highest rate of poverty is between 17 and 24 years of age. And that can be adjusted for a number of things. So now let's go to this one right here. Household income. This one is kind of interesting here too. This is the next page. So household income includes the incomes of household holder and all other related and unrelated individuals 15 years and older living in the household. The median household income for all minority veterans was $981 in 2014, compared with $39,998 for minority non-veterans. Part of this difference could be explained by the fact that minority veterans, on average, are older and more likely to participate in the labor force. Median household incomes were higher for minority veterans than for minority non-veterans in all age groups. Median household income were highest for Asian veterans at $75,000 and Asian non-veterans at $73,000. So again,
interesting.
Yeah. So again, as we see among veteran population, we're seeing similar trends among Asians, where they tend to have the highest median household incomes, whether that's among Asian veterans or Asian non-veterans, i.e. civilians. So, in fact, Asian veterans have a slightly higher income, total household median household income than their Asian non-veteran counterparts. So if you look right here in this graph here, you'll see that from 17 to 24 years of age, for veterans, the median household income is $36,984. That is technically poverty.
Yeah. Yep. Because I think the median salary that is above poverty line, or you could say is the poverty line, I think here in America, if you account for inflation, you're looking at 45,000. So once you go below 45,000, you're now considered in poverty range.
Yeah. I want to say at 36,000, I want to say that's like 150% of poverty level. I want to say that. I can't remember exactly how that's calculated. Can't remember the exact number, what that would fall into, but this is definitely in the range of what would be considered impoverished. Now, again, these would be your young veterans. And this graph, I want people to keep this in mind, because there's another article we're going to go over here shortly that's going to talk about poverty among veterans and even in active duty specifically. So if you look, the highest earners, the age groups with the highest earners are technically between 35 to 74 years of age. So these are typically tend to be your prime working years. Many folks are just starting to get out of the military between that 35 and 44 years of age. So some of them may already be, if they've done 20 years, they may be collecting their pension. So that's, I'm certain that's being calculated into the total household income. But as you can see, basically from 35 to 74 years of age, so about a 40-year period, you're seeing the highest earning is the age groups with the highest earnings. And even ironically enough, even folks 75 and older are still have still pretty solid income.
Right.
Yeah. So the poorest veterans are basically between 17 and 34 years of age for a household. And so we're assuming that a standard household, a nuclear family, we're assuming would be a husband, wife, two kids. So four person household. So just something to keep in mind. Um, I don't really think the rest of the stuff needs to go. We don't really need to go into this. I think we can move on. We can move on to the next one because this
All
might have to
right.
get continued because there's so much to break down here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Believe me, I feel like we have. This will definitely be continuations. I don't think that this will be a one-stop show.
Yeah.
Let me see. Okay, yeah.
Well,
Here's the next
well,
one.
you know what? Because what is how long do you want to do this for? Because I don't know. I don't know if your time is short because I made sure I set time enough time to try to go through most of these, but I know there was quite a few here.
Hmm.
So depending on how much time you want to devote to this, we can skip over some or we can just continue with what we're doing now.
Well, I think definitely let's show them the calculator
Okay,
because
yeah,
I
let's do
think
that.
we definitely need to show them the discrepancy between how much you earn as enlisted versus what
Okay,
you could,
so
yeah, potentially
uh,
earn as
before
a.
you bring up the calculator, let's
Okay.
bring up let's bring up the last article that I sent you, which is the military wallet.com. Military retirement worth millions.
Okay. So yeah, let me bring that up.
Yeah. So let's do that because maybe there might be some other things we want to talk about here. So we have some time to discuss some other things. Okay. So this is in the military wallet. This was written by a gentleman named Ryan Guina, December 19th, 2017. So about 4 years ago. So so it's called A Military Retirement is worth millions of dollars. That's a bold headline, especially if you're a retired enlisted military member only bringing in a little over $1,000 a month in retirement pay. But it's true. A military retirement is worth well over $1 million. In some cases, it's worth millions of dollars. Before we get deep into this, and dot dot dot, and
I think they're right here.
yeah,
He drops off this. Okay. So
yeah, I'm looking into it because it was just kind of interesting. Because just kind of
yeah.
looking through it. It says before we get too deep in this, I want to define what I am talking about. I am talking about two factors: the long-term value in regard to how much you will receive in direct pension over the lifetime of your retirement benefits, and the value of the retirement benefits, including healthcare coverage and other benefits. Combined, these benefits are easily worth of $1 million, even if you don't have the spending power of $1 million right now. And and again, when you retire from the military, they're assuming that you're probably going to live to about age of 85. That's the assumption.
Hmm.
Now we know for black men in general tend to not live quite as long as other groups of males. And again, as we recently learned, you many black men are dying in their early 50s and mid 50s. A number of them. We've seen this over the past year or two with John Singleton. Obviously, he died from a massive stroke earlier in the year. Was it? Yeah,
Hmm.
early in the year. Yeah. We've seen this with a number of black men who are dying from a number of chronic illnesses that certainly could have been mitigated and certainly could have been managed. But again, what we're seeing here is that we're assuming that the average retiree will live to about 85 years of age. But we know for most black men, that may not be the case.
Yeah.
Most black men, the average age of life for most black men is around 65. So again, that can be adjusted for a few factors, but nonetheless, most men are living well into their 70s and 80s. Black men are dying much sooner than everyone else, and certainly are dying much sooner than everyone else from preventable chronic diseases and chronic illnesses. So again, we're looking at for an example, you look at something like strokes. Like everyone remembers, probably a year ago, uh, John Singleton had a massive stroke that killed him. Everyone's not familiar with John Singleton. He was the guy that created Boys in the Hood. He was the director, producer of Boys in the Hood. Again, long known in the ranks in the world in Hollywood. You know, very a relatively wealthy man, but he died. Didn't have a will. His estate was left in protest. Family was fighting over his estate before he even had a funeral. So again, we're seeing that there's all these things that come into play. So when you're thinking about retirement and pension, I'll like keep in mind that you might not necessarily be able to reap the entirety of this pension, especially given that in general veterans tend to be more unhealthy and suffer from more chronic illnesses than their non-veteran counterparts. But just to keep that in mind. So now for this gentleman, he says, let's look at an example of retirement pay for an average military career, since military members are eligible for retirement benefits at 20 years. So if you joined at 18, you can retire at 38. You joined at 20, retire at 40. Blah, 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 you get the point. So it is reasonable to assume that the average enlisted member will be able to retire at 20 years having achieved the rank of E7. Now, E7 in the enlisted, E7 is enlisted. That's the beginning of what is considered senior enlisted ranks. Now, most I can tell you from at least many of the black males I have met, if not most of them don't even retire at that E7. Most of them retire more like an E5, E6. And to get to E7, you have to have college. Usually, most E7s have usually a college degree by that time. So keep in mind how all these things sort of have this cumulative effect. So again, he's assuming that you got to a rank of E7, but as you'll see in the calculator here in shortly, that's really not going to make much of a difference anyway. Of course, there will be outliers based on when you serve, your career field, and other factors, but these ranks and service times should apply to the majority of careers. If anything, I am aiming on the conservative side because many people choose to serve longer than 20-year mark. Because if you serve more than 20 years, specifically, if you serve 40 years in the military, you get 100% of your pay as pension. So if anyone doesn't know that, but yes, if you serve 40 years, you get 100%. But I've only met like 2 or 3 people in my life who've actually served that long. So if you look, so as we mentioned before, we look at military retiree with 20 years of service at the ranks of E7 for enlisted and 05 for officers. So 05, if you're in the Army, that's considered a light colonel. That's not quite a senior, what would be considered a senior commissioned officer rank. That's kind of more like a field officer, if you will. But these in the Army, I think they're light colonels, so they're not what we call a full bird colonel. They're light colonels. They're called lieutenant colonels, the actual name. I'm not sure what they are called, what an 05 is in some of the other branches, but I can tell you for the Army, they're called light colonels. They're called lieutenant colonels, or people just call them light colonels for short sometimes. So a monthly E7 pay at 20 years of service is $3,995 a month. Annually, that comes out to about $47,944.80. 05 annual pay $7,697. Monthly pay $7,697.40. Annual pay $92,368.80. Most retirees will see 50% of their base pay, which will equal the following amounts. If you're an E7, your pension would be roughly about 1,997, and that would come out annually to around $23,972. If you're in 05, your monthly pay, your monthly pension would be around $3,848.70, and your annual would be about $46,184.40. Are we kind of getting a idea here of what to look? So typically, if I remember correctly, for the military, your pension is calculated on your 3 years, on your three highest earning years. And so whatever those 3 years, wherever your highest earning, they take half of that will be calculated as your pension. So again, now what you see up top, that $3,995 for E7, that's basically the standard pay rate. Now there are things that can affect your pay, whether you're, whether depending on what kind of field you're in, yes, that can affect it, but it's not going to be by a whole lot. It's not going to make that. It's not going to make a huge difference, to be honest with you. So now if you look, he calculated that retirement pay over 20 years at $1,997. Over 20 years will come out to around just shy of 480,000 for E7 pension at over 20 years. So, and you look for the 05, you see a pretty significant difference. So now this is not a senior commissioned officer, but you see it's almost double that of the E7 at $923,688 over a 20-year period.
Wow.
So almost double. Well, technically, yeah, almost double. Yeah. Now over a 30-year period, the gap gets even further at $1,385,000 for 05 at 30 years, 532 cents. $532. And at 40 years, $1,847,376. So yeah. So I just want to bring that up just to give guys an actual idea how military retirement is calculated. So yes, you get folks that get on panels that tell you about military retirement is great, it's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not saying that it isn't, but unless you're truth be told, unless you know the military is the only thing you want to do in your life, I would not personally recommend doing 20 years unless you're an officer. And you better go in when you're young. So you can come out when you're in your late 30s, early 40s or something, and then get a 6-figure job and be able to collect even more on that in that route. But most folks don't do that. Most black males don't do that. So again, so as you're seeing, the difference between officer and enlisted, and this is, now keep in mind, a 05 is not a senior officer. It's not considered part of the senior officer corps, okay? That's 06 and up. So 06 is your full bird colonels, then you get into your brigadier generals, your lieutenant generals, and all your major generals and lieutenant generals, then your 4-star generals, okay? You look at someone like Colin Powell, who lifelong service, 40 plus years of military service, okay? Obviously, this guy he had a pretty nice life, but again, the military was his life, was his career. So unless you're planning to do that, it's not even worth it. Even for an 05, even though they make significantly more than an E7. Now this is a 05 is an officer, is a field officer. They're not senior officers, but an E7 is a senior enlisted. Okay, so you can see the discrepancy between a senior enlisted versus a non-senior officer. Yeah, almost twice.
That's what I was getting at. Just a difference in education will make a world of difference based on the scaling.
So let's go to Let's see what else that I want to hit real quick before we go on to the next one. Um, truth be told, I mean, you do get pretty nice retirement medical benefits, but I would tell you this much. If you're a veteran and you never did 20 years, but you got a Purple Heart, you get the best military benefit, you get the best benefits money can buy, the best medical care money can buy. It is free. You do not pay nothing. Hell, your kids don't even have to pay for schooling if you're a Purple Heart recipient. That's why you had that big stink about a week or so ago with those U.S. Army service members that were given Purple Hearts and Medal of Honors. These were one of the guys in there was a black man who served during the war in Iraq, who served in Iraq, who died back in 2005. And what a lot of folks don't understand is that, yes, while on paper, yeah, it sounds nice to do it, but truth be told, you will probably fare better if you're going to make the military career. You definitely fare better. Don't even bother considering enlisted. It's a waste of time. I can tell you right now, I know plenty of students coming up I know plenty of 20-year-olds coming up out of the undergrad that are making more than this 05 and the E7 put together.
Very true. Very true.
So again, what you're seeing, you're seeing a major discrepancy between those who are enlisted versus those who are officers. And as you can see, the longer the time you're in that enlisted versus that officer, you see that gap gets even wider. So if you're going to spend 20 plus years of service, it better be as an officer. But let's go to the calculator so we can put a real dollar value on it so people can really see it.
Yeah, that's definitely. I'm looking forward to this one because this is one where I think dudes need to look long and hard before they sign off on either being enlisted or value your education, then go into the military.
Yeah, so let's bring this one up. I'll bring this up on my slide as well so we can kind of hear. So yeah, so as you can see, this is from the militarypayinddefense.gov. So this is the official military website, how you calculate your compensation. Okay. So before dumbasses get to asking about where you get your data from, this is from the what does it say? https:// militarypay.defense.gov, right? So this is official government website. Okay. So before dumbasses get to asking, where did you get your data from? So let's just look at where most black males tend to fall into the category. We'll say E6. Let's just say E6 because most black males ain't getting to E7 or above.
All right.
Let's just say you got. Let's start at 5. Let's just start at 5 years. Let's say you got 5 years in, you're E6. You should be able to make an E6 5. Well, they don't have 5 years. They do it in increments of 2. So let's do 6 years. At 6 years, you should be able to get to an E6. Especially if you're in combat arms. So we'll say if you're a single guy, let's just say you're single. And we'll do it if you're a family of 4, including yourself. Let's just say you're OCONUS or not receiving BH. So living OCONUS means you're living outside of the continental United States. So are you living OCONUS or not receiving BH? Let's just say no. So now keep in mind, BAH that's basic allowance for housing, and there's the other one called BAS, which is basic allowance for subsistence. And so, because depending on what state you're actually enlisted from, you you might not be able to, you might not pay like state taxes or something, because despite you being in the military, you do still pay a number of you still pay taxes. But some states, because because you're military, you're active duty, they don't require you to pay state income tax in some respects. If you deploy, you don't pay federal income tax, but you still pay Medicare, Medicaid, and the Social Security tax. Just for record, you're not completely exempt from all taxes, just the basic federal income tax if you deploy. So how BH and BAS is calculated is based on your zip code. So in other words, if you live in a city, in an area where there's a high income, where you have a high income zip code, for example, you live in Arlington, Virginia, or you live in I don't know, you live in, I don't know, Buckhead, Atlanta, for example, because a lot of your veterans are actually in the South. Most of your veterans are actually concentrated within your southern states. So if you live in the South, let's say you live in Atlanta, you live in Buckhead, and let's just say, for example, you live in, I don't know, what's a Buckhead zip code would be, I don't know, let's see, I think it's 303. 30326, I think, is a Buckhead zip code. So let's put in 30326. I'll do it on my end as well.
All right.
So let's calculate. Hit calculate, and let's see what we come up with. So your total military compensation equates to $73,980.71. Now, keep in mind, here's the sticker. It looks like a lot, but it really isn't. Here's the sticker. Now, anyone that's been to Atlanta, been to Buckhead, will tell you Buckhead is the most expensive. It's the most expensive area in Atlanta. Average income in Buckhead is around $280,000 a year. The average of the median household income in Buckhead is around $280,000 a year. Okay, this is the land of Buckhead is the land of $1 million townhomes. So if you look here, 70,000, not bad, not bad. It sounds like a decent amount of money, not bad per se. But look at your base pay. Your base pay is $41,464.80. Now your basic allowance for housing is $23,976. Why is that? Because in Buckhead, the average apartment here is $2,000. The average apartment in Buckhead is at least $2,000.
Oh man.
Okay. So let's look at basic annual basic allowance assistance, $4,638. So what this equates to is basically food stuff like that, and non-taxable allowances, BAH and BAS, which is $28,614. So basically, BAH and BAS is not taxed. So while total those together equate to about $28,000, when you think about it, this money automatically will come out of your check. They give it, but they take it in the same check. Okay, so in other words, if you're living in housing or whatever, and they're providing you assistance for it, allowance for it, excuse me, what's happening is that you're going to sit in your check, but it's not going to necessarily come to you per se. Okay, they're taking it in the same bank because they're paying for it. Okay. So here's the problem. Does this really keeps up with inflation? No. And when you look at the subsistence allowance, and for a single person, you should be fine. But if you truly think about it, in this current era where we're dealing with relatively high rates of inflation right now, $4,638 is not really a whole lot. And we're going to change that family. We're going to change that tax filing status to single and to change it to a family of four here in a few moments, so you can kind of see the difference. But see, you see your standard deductions. You got a tax rate of 12%. So by the time they deducted your taxes, you're actually probably going to end up with about $30,000. So most of your money is technically is going to go to paying your expenses and housing and stuff like that. So again, the pay is not really reflective for someone with 6 years in E6 and that. But let's just keep this 73,000. So write this down, keep that down, keep write that down. But let's just turn this into married filing jointly. Okay? Let's just say married filing jointly. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you're still in E6 with 6 years in, but we're gonna change the family size to four. So you, wife, and two kids. Okay? And we keep everything else the same. Now let's hit calculate. Let's see what we get here. Not a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, not a lot at all.
only a only about a $5,000 difference. And you now there's 4 mouths to feed instead of just one. Okay. So again, your tax rate gone down a little bit. That's because you're married, so you pay slightly less taxes. So it went from 12 to 10%. Not a major difference. You get you get a little bit more for your basic allowance for housing. Your base pay doesn't change, so it's still at 41,000. Now, keep in mind, in the previous article, we talked about how your pension is calculated, how your retirement is calculated. So if you had 3 consecutive years of earning $41,464, so and you took half of that, you'll probably be getting a check for around like $1,500 a month.
Ooh,
Okay,
boy.
just as an example. Okay, even if you account for other factors, it's not going to substantially raise that number that much higher. So, okay, we got that at E6 with 6 years in. Okay, let's change it to 10 years. Let's see where we're at. Now you're halfway through your enlistment to your 20 years. You had 10 years in. Let's change it. Let's see what we get here. At E6 with 10 years in, married, filing jointly with you know with four people in the household, you're looking at a compensation of 84,387. So about a $6,000 difference from 6 years in with a family of four, married, to 10 years. So roughly about a $6,000 difference. Still not really a whole lot for 10 years of service.
And not only that, your tax rate went up.
Yes.
Ah,
But look at the base pay. Here we are again. Your base pay only went up by about 5,000 so dollars.
right.
Went from 41 to 46,000. 10 years in. Okay. Okay. So you, you, you're looking at a deduction of $25,000. Okay. So your total deductions will equate to about 25,000. Your taxable income is around 21,000. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. Not really a whole lot. So even if you took this and say, okay, I made $46,000, 46.5, my three highest earning years. Okay. You took about half of that, equates to about 20, correlates to roughly about 1,900 and 50, about 950, 50ish or something like that. About $1,900 a month. Not really a whole lot, folks.
No,
Okay.
definitely not a lot.
Okay, let's go up. Now, and after we do this, when we go do it on the officer side at an 06. So well, excuse me, at an 05. So we're not gonna do it. We go do this is a non-senior enlisted, and then we're gonna do it at an 05, so a non-senior officer as well, so you can see the difference. So let's do 20 years in. So 20 years in, let's just keep everything the same and calculate. Because I would expect that 20 years in, you might be married. You're probably most likely you're married. So 20 years in, $89,000. Okay. $89,000. Now, we've heard conversations in on the black side of YouTube, especially for a lot of guys in tech, saying that yeah, they they make multiples of that in tech. You know, they're making 200, 300, 500, $600,000 plus. Okay. I know, I know plenty of nurses, and certainly I know plenty of medical professionals that are making well more than that right now. And they've only been out of nursing school, got a BSN and been out of nursing school maybe 2 or 3 years and making like 250 grand a year during COVID. Go figure.
Wow. Yeah.
So it would take, if you made 89,000, let's just say you pocketed all that money. Let's just say you pocketed all that money, 89,000. Now we know that in this current environment, folks in specific industries are cleaning up tech, healthcare. We know that, right? So if you're in tech and you're making, you know, maybe you're making 200 grand a year doing whatever you do, okay? This person will still at 20 years in, you're making more than them maybe with 3 or 4 years into your profession.
Yeah.
Okay. I know for a fact, a nurse, because I still get the damn emails and text messages, that if you're a nurse, you you're getting job offers for contract work, PRN work for $125 plus an hour. Okay. So that would equate to roughly around $250,000 a year if you had to calculate it annually. So just something to keep in mind. Now, I'm not saying this to discourage folks from military service, but I am saying you better know some math and you better add up the numbers, because right now the numbers ain't looking so hot.
Right.
Now look at your base pay. Now here's your base pay. If you look right here for your base pay, $51,566.40. Now again, BAH and BAS is typically not calculated in pension, so in your retirement, so it's truthfully based on your base pay for the most part. There's some other factors that come into it, but like I said, it's not going to wildly change it. You're looking here at around, if you had to calculate it, somewhere around $2,500, $2,600 a month. Again, I can show you undergrad. I can show you plenty of undergrads making far more than that in a week.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So again, don't get me wrong. And that's $2,500 sounds nice when you were 18, 20 years old, went to the military, you left as an E6, and yeah, now you can get out, you can collect $2,500, you got free healthcare, all that stuff. But here's the problem. You can be a veteran and not spend 20 years and still get compensation from the VA that will match that. Plus, you still get free healthcare. And if you get out and if you capitalize on it early, you can still keep your life insurance. So whatever the insurance policy in the military, I think it's 500,000. I think it is now. It might be a little bit more. I think maybe, but about 250,000 of it is guaranteed to your immediate to your spouse, to your immediate to your spouse, and the other 250 is designated to whoever you want. But again, the total equates to about $500,000. So again, if you look at this, family of four, you're E6, 20 years in, married, filing jointly. Yeah, not a whole lot of difference. You know, basically between 6 to 20 years in, you're only looking at roughly about $13,000 difference. Or you can do head of household. Let's try head of household. Let's see what we get for that. Doesn't even change. Not even worth looking at. Doesn't even change. Doesn't even change. I mean, you can click on it, but it's not going to change. So.
Nope. Everything's still the same.
So let's say if you're single, let's just say you're the E6 single at 20 years in. Let's see what you got.
All right. Single.
Still doesn't change at all. Doesn't change.
Let's see. Nope.
So again, what accounts for that as a married person is that they do pay you a little bit more because you have dependents, obviously. But again, I specifically chose this zip code because I want to show you the difference. Now, if you pick what's a low income zip code? Um, mm, let
That's
me
a good
see.
question.
Yeah, let me see something. Let me do this really quickly. Let me see if I can find. Let's do low income zip codes. We'll just say okay. Oh, well, let's do 3-1. Let's try this one here. 312. Oops. Let's try 31206.
All right. Ooh, it decreased.
Yes, that's because BAH and BAS is based on your zip code. Went down by quite a bit, right? Your base pay stayed the same, but all the additional pay that they offer to, help you survive, to help you, survive, it has gone down considerably.
I mean, you literally just lost $12,000 just based off a zip code.
Hmm. So zip code really does matter. Base pay is not a generic number. Base pay is a standard number for a service member, including adjusted for time and service. So this
Right.
website is adjusting for time and service. It's not just a generic number. But I want to keep this in mind. All the extra pay you get is very much based on where you're at. So wherever your zip code, your permanent duty station. So if you're in a area like Monterey, California, for example, obviously you're gonna make more. If you're someplace, like I say, you're in like Buckhead, you're gonna make more. If you're in, there's other zip code. I think this is a. I was just using Georgia as an example because most of your veterans are actually in that south or in the southern states, and specifically that southeast section of the country, from basically from Virginia on down.
Right.
Um, so
And
basically, go ahead.
oh no, no, it's just and knowing what I know right now,
It's not a
the
generic. Give me a second here. It's not a
yeah,
generic number if you factor in locality. The point is that all of these things are base pay. If you go to the militaries, you can go to the website and you can see base pay. This is not a generic number. The what
right,
increases the pay is whether you have dependents or if you get additional pay for something else. For
right,
whether you're on jump duty, let's say you're airborne, you're paratrooper. If you're on jump duty, you get a few extra $100.
it,
Okay,
it,
if you're in certain MOSs, you get a little bit extra base pay. Not a major difference. Everything is calculated around your base pay, time in service, and rank, and whether or not you're married or single.
right, and also keep in mind the point we're trying to point out here is not about as far as if this is a generic pay or not. The fact of the matter is, this is what happens if you pretty much don't have education. So you can spend 20 something years in the military. More than that, there's a cap.
Yes, it is capped.
There is a
Thank you.
cap.
Thank you for saying that. It is capped.
So in other words, you really are better off going ahead and get you an education and then expounding on that to get a bigger pay. Otherwise, this is worthless if you go
Yeah,
enlisted.
yeah. Okay, since of course we go, I knew this was gonna happen. So let's just okay. Let's change family size to one,
Mm-hmm.
and let's go to '05.
All right. Oh five.
Yeah,
And
so Officer 5. This will be in the Army. This will correlate to a lieutenant colonel. So, and we'll go down to let's just say you got 6 years in, you're 05. We'll say you got 6 years. Okay, we'll just keep it at there. Because typically it's a bit more difficult to get rank as an officer in the military because a lot of that is very dependent on the assignments you take, duty stations. This is why your infantry officers get promoted the quickest because they take on they lead infantry units. Well, not just infantry, but your combat arms units in general. So that also includes artillery as well if you're in the Army, and certainly I would imagine the same is for the Marines as well. But here's an 05. So this is what in the Army this would be considered a lieutenant colonel. So this is not a senior commissioned officer. So this is kind of at the cuff. So when you become an 06, you have to go to the War College to go become an 06. You have to go to the War College. So anybody don't know what the War College is, or the War College is I want to say South Carolina. Is that the Citadel? I can't remember. But I want to say I think the War College is. I can't remember exactly what it was. I know there's one in DC. There's one in DC because there's a lot of the universities that are actually have partnerships with the War College. They have a couple locations, but the major one that folks go to is in DC. So here, let me get back to this.
And then the zip code, want me to change that back to the 30326?
Yeah, and the reason I'm using that because again, Georgia tends to have Georgia has a high percentage of service personnel, so that's why I'm using it.
All right, let's go ahead and calculate and see what we get.
So 6 years in, single. Here, let me. I didn't put it in either.
I'm already annual basic pay, $9,547.20.
Yeah. That's so 90,000. 90,000. Almost. You're looking at double.
Yeah, that's double. That's double for an E5. Literally double what an E5 would get for the same tax filing, same number of years, in the same zip code.
Yeah. So you're seeing double. So if you took half of that, if you just took the base pay on that alone, just calculate the straight up base pay on that alone, you're looking at roughly, if you took half of that, that's about $45,000, which half of that would equate to roughly about $3,000 some a month, which I suppose you can, depending on where you're at, you can survive on that, I suppose. But again, that's an 05 with 6 years in. Most of your officers are typically going to do their 20 because it's just more of a financial incentive for them to do. Because as you can see, with just at an 05 with 6 years in, that's assuming you just went straight into, one of the military academies like West Point, Annapolis, or something like that, and you graduated. Those folks typically get on those fast tracks to those senior officer ranks. And also too, if you were ROTC, you were recruited from college. You tend to get on those fast tracks too, depending on what university you went to. So again, a lot of your Ivy League schools, they have ROTC. Princeton, Yale, Columbia, number of your schools, Georgetown, number of your schools. And again, people don't see there's a strong correlation between one, having this, because I think part of the problem is that the reason I want when you and I talk about this, and one of the reasons I want to do it, because there is a lot of misinformation. Because I would much rather you spend 20 years in as an 05 and you never made it to a goddamn a senior officer and got your 20 years in as 05, because hey, you can still get out at 40 some years old and go get you a $200,000 a year job. It's not highly likely you're going to get a $200,000 a year job even with 20 years in and you were an E8.
You know what?
because
Let's just.
officer jobs that correlate with the officer corps typically are executive level C-suite jobs. That's what they don't tell you in the enlisted. That's what they don't tell you when you get into the minutia of all this. Folks who are officers, especially senior officers, they go out and get executive level jobs. But go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying let's just go ahead and look at it. An old 05 will put in 20 years, keep everything the same, do the calculations.
Yeah, let's
I
just do exactly what we've been doing before.
I mean, it's still a world of difference.
Yeah,
Annual basic pay 117,792. That's, let's see, we just did the E7 that was capped at like 51. That's still double.
yeah. The base pay. Look at the base pay, more than double, almost 2.5 times, more than double. And that's an '05 with 20 years in. 20, 20 years in, and you're a single man. 20 years. Now let's do 20 years, and let's just say you're married, filing jointly. Let's just say you're married, filing jointly with family of four. Keep it the same. Calculate it. 165,000. Your base pay didn't change much, but still a significant amount,
Right.
significantly more than being enlisted. Okay, this is an '05. Now let's look at the senior officer ranks. Let's go to a '06. Let's go to the next one of '06. And let's put it at 10. Let's just put it at 10 years because you ain't gonna see no damn '06 and '06 years. We'll say 10 years. Let's say you got 10
Mm-hmm.
years in your '06. And we'll keep it at the 30326. That's the Buckhead area code for
Mm-hmm.
Georgia. So we'll just keep it at that as an example. So calculate that. Yeah, we'll keep it at married, filing jointly, 4 people.
Okay, so it's slightly decreased, but you're still looking at double for
Yeah,
the annual basic pay.
yeah.
And then look at the tax rate. It went from 22% all the way down now to 12%, a 10% drop.
Yeah. So don't get it confused when guys are telling you about, oh, if you think you done screwed up your life, you done screwed up your life and think the military is going to help you correct it. It's not going to help you correct it. Because whatever led to you screwing up your life, you're just going to go into the military with that schism, with that dysfunction, and it's going to get exacerbated. So if you were felon in your civilian life, you're going to the military felon. Okay? And there's always a place in the military for those folks.
You know, just one more thing I want to look at. So
Yes,
let's
sir.
go back to the '05
Mm-hmm.
and we'll go back to 20 and we'll keep it single, better one. But now let's go back to that, that poor zip code. So the 312,
Three one what was it? 31206.
oh 06. Okay. Because I'm curious what that's going to look like.
So this is a poor zip code in Georgia.
A poor zip code in Georgia, and you still would be doing far better with at least a college degree.
Mhm. And this is exactly, mhm. In fact, truth be told, you might fare you might fare a little bit better because if you see the difference is actually in your base pay. Your base pay is higher if you're '05 with 20 years in and you were single versus if you were even in '06 with 20 years in and you were married. So your base
Right.
pay is a little higher. So again, you're seeing a almost 2.5 times increase in the amount you're paid in your pay. Now let's juxtapose this against. Remember that article talked about an E7. Let's look at an E7 because that's the beginning of your senior enlisted ranks. So let's just do 20 years in single. Let's just do it. We ain't even got to do the 5 years. Let's just do the 20 years in single, and let's put it back to the Buckhead zip code, which is 30326. So let's do that.
Wow.
See the difference?
You literally have dropped from 117,000 to now 61,000. You're looking at
Like a 70% decrease.
right.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to get at. This is the point I'm trying to make. So I'm hoping that for the younger black males out here, stop listening to people telling you that, hey, you might not have the best start in life. Your best bet is still going to be to go get your ass a college degree. And if you still want to go into the military, join while you're in college so they can pay your college while you're in ROTC, and they can throw a couple extra dollars in your pocket so you're not a broke ass college student. So you're not going to the food banks like many goddamn black college students.
And check it for you. I gotta say that I hear your thoughts. You're talking about going into the military enlisted now with a plan can be the better option. Check it for you. Let's be realistic. How many of these guys actually come in with a plan? Little less than 5%.
Look, the military has a knack of finding people who plan to fail.
Right.
This again, when we go back to some of the earlier articles that talked about how the military spends a lot of money on recruitment. Do you know what most of their recruitment budget goes to? Marketing. Mm-hmm. And you know who they pay? Go holler at the folks on Madison Avenue. Go holler at the American Psychological Association, APA, in Chicago. That's where that money goes to. They have a psychological profile on their typical recruit. Okay? If you don't believe me, go ask your recruiter. So they know exactly who they're targeting.
I'm just looking at the numbers. Again, I am a mathematician by trade. So looking at these numbers is telling me, it is literally telling me a language, a coded language. And I'm sorry. There is no way, no possible way you can make a living off of these numbers if you think that just going into the military with no educational background, you can make a living off of this. I'm sorry. The numbers are just not making that sense to me with that logic.
I do want to say something really quickly to what Isaac's trying to say. He has a point to an extent, but I want to make it very clear about the trades or whatever. I'm not against trades or nothing like that, but I want to make it clear that folks who go into the military thinking you're going to get a trade, typically that doesn't happen. In fact, those who come out who might have did something like being a mechanic, you still typically, unless you got those certifications while you're in, you're going to have to come out in the civilian world and you're going to have to take those. You're going to have to take those courses. You're going to have to go to school and take those trades and take the courses, the required courses necessary, get the necessary training, and then get recertified. Now, they will give you an exception. They will make exceptions for certain trades, like, for example, truck drivers in a number of states. And I can tell you now in Wisconsin, if you were a veteran and you were a truck driver and you have your CDL in the military, you don't have to take that test to get a CDL in Wisconsin. It transfers over, which saves you a bit of time and money. So, I mean, I'm not against that, but I'm also saying for that to be applicable, you need to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, these things don't work, which is what I'm getting at. Because again, the more time you spend in the military at these enlisted grades, at the enlisted grades, the more money you're going to ultimately lose.
Now I'm going to do some calculation. I'm going to keep all this the same, but I'm gonna change the zip code to one of my local areas. Tempe is a suburb of Phoenix, but obviously we have a university
Mhm.
out here, and we have a ROTC program within this university. So I'm just gonna
Mhm.
see, as an enlisted person, 20 years, all the same. Just gonna see what happens. Um, what differences in numbers.
And again, Eisenhower, that is true to an extent. They're at colleges, but they're at your community colleges and trade schools. And there was actually some other articles that I had given to Sigma Jones about this, and I had one article posted up about how yeah, a lot of these technical schools, these trade schools, and specifically community colleges, most veterans don't even make it out of it.
You know what? Just for time's sake, that will be the last article we're going to go into, because I
Yeah,
think we definitely need to talk about that. So let me pull that up real quick.
yeah. If you want to bring
Let's
that
see.
one up,
Okay, here we
it was
go.
an Atlantic article.
And right here.
So this was written about 4 years ago.
So if you don't mind, Doc, I'll go ahead and read this for you.
Yes, please, please.
Yeah.
Be my guest, please.
So it says community colleges rarely graduate the veterans they recruit. The amount of GI Bill money may be large, but the student success is small. San Diego. In the main room of a one time fraternity house at the edge of San Diego State University, a small group of student laborers quietly laser focus over textbooks and laptops. This is the veteran's house, its door propped open by a spent artillery shell. It's where some of more than 800 military veterans enrolled here study between classes as a flat screen TV broadcasts Sports Center with the volume muted, or help each other out with particular challenging assignments. At the heart of the campus is yet another lounge for student veterans, called the Bunker. It's draped with camouflage and decorated with service symbols, insignia, and vintage recruiting posters. It's inside the Veterans Center, a warren of offices filled with advisors and counselors, most military veterans themselves, who cut through paperwork and other potentially career ending distractions. This level of support helps more than 3/4 of the veterans at San Diego State graduate within 4 years, the university reports, nearly double the national average. That's in spite of extra challenges confronting student veterans, who are usually older than traditionally aged students and are more likely to be juggling college with families, jobs, and service related disabilities, and who often face significantly more red tape. They can do it all here, said Chaz Painter, a former Navy gunner's mate who had just gotten help at the Veterans Center with some forms. You don't have to go down to the VA or wait forever on the phone or go online. I came here and got it all done in 5 minutes. Success rates like San Diego State's are more of an exception than the rule, however. Many colleges and universities that eagerly recruit military veterans and the $10.2 billion a year in GI Bill benefits that come with them offer nowhere near as much support, and their student veterans rarely get degrees, according to data obtained from the Department of Defense, Education, and Veteran Affairs. The odds of a GI Bill recipient graduating from San Diego Mesa College, just 8 miles away, for example, are 1 in 100. Even that's better than some schools, though. At nearly a third, of the 20 two-year schools that enroll at least 100 veterans receiving GI Bill benefits and who are eligible for degrees, none of them get one. These aren't for-profit colleges and universities, some of which Democrats in Congress say treat veterans and service members like dollar signs in uniforms, targeting them for the billions of dollars in education benefits they bring. There are public community colleges at which student veterans' educations are subsidized not once, but twice by taxpayers through support of the colleges directly and with those billions in GI Bill money. As for how student veterans using the GI Bill do at four-year universities nationwide, there's no official way to know. Nearly a decade after the start of the post 9/11 GI Bill, which has so far cost $73 billion, according to the VA, those institutions have forestalled attempts to make them tell the government how many of the taxpayer subsidized student veterans they enroll actually ever get degrees. Among community colleges, the Hechinger Report review of the federal data suggests an average of only 15% of full-time students receiving GI Bill money graduated with a 2-year degree in 2014, the most recent period for which the figure is available. That includes those who took 3 years to do it, a particular problem for the other 85%, considering GI Bill benefits cover a maximum of 36 cumulative months in college, which should be enough for a bachelor's degree, but leaves little margin for error. The proportion attending part-time that graduated within 3 years was 7%. The national average 3-year community college graduation rates for full-time and part-time students are 23% and 12% respectively, the Independent National Student Clearinghouse reports. At those 20 institutions with 100 or more GI Bill recipients eligible to finish in 2014, the government data disclosed that even the ones with the highest veteran success rates managed to graduate only 1 in 5. In all but one case, the Trident Community College in Charleston, South Carolina, veterans graduated at much lower rates than other students. And here we have a graph that shows a lot of these community colleges, and just look at that data. Here's the number of veterans. This says community colleges with 100 or more GI Bill recipients eligible to graduate, and a proportion who actually do. So, like, for example, the Austin Community College District, they had a total of 3,016 veterans. Only 187 are eligible to graduate in 2014, and 0% of veterans who have graduated. And the percentages of all students who graduated, only 7%. So, interesting numbers. The findings demonstrate more can be done to support the needs of these non-traditional students, said Barrett Bogue, the spokesman for the advocacy organization Student Veterans of America. Things do not appear to be improving. The proportion of both part-time and full-time veteran students who enroll in college and then return for a second year is falling, the data show. For students overall, it's been slowly rising. The proportion who transfer has remained flat at around 43%. Just like graduation rates from four-year universities, there is so far no way to know whether those 43% who transfer from community colleges ever finish somewhere else. 4 years after the Department of Veterans Affairs was ordered by frustrated members of Congress to provide veterans with streamlined tools to compare educational institutions using key measures of affordability and value at all universities and colleges, a spokesman said the department still doesn't have a target date for doing so. Some universities with significant veteran support and high levels of success, such as San Diego and Florida State universities, voluntarily divulge their student veterans graduate weights, though often in ways that make them hard to compare directly. San Diego State reports that 76% of its student veterans finish within 4 years, for instance, while Florida State says 81% of its veterans earn their degrees within 6. And San Diego State's figures go through 2012, while Florida State's cover the period through 2015. In the absence of official national success rates, Student Veterans of America produced one in February in collaboration with the National Student Clearinghouse, the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University, and the Military Family Research Institute at Purdue University. This first of its kind report, called the National Veteran Education Success Tracker, says 53.6% of the 853,111 veterans using GI benefits who arrived on campus in the fall of 2009 graduated within 6 years. That's 0.7 of a percentage point better than students overall. Another 18% were still enrolled, the study found, meaning just over 28% had dropped out or stopped using government benefits. But the figure is a national average, and graduation rates are not broken down by institutions. I don't know what that would show, said Jared Lyon, the president and CEO of Student Veterans of America and a Florida State graduate. But I would love to know. Advocates and student veterans themselves say the fact that they do even slightly better than their classmates nationally, on average, attests to their discipline, maturity, and drive to balance college with financial, family, and work commitments, service-related disabilities, and the confounding rules and regulations governing not only military education benefits, but medical ones. Painter, the former gunner's mate who is now a business major and hopes to someday work for the San Diego Padres, said he didn't worry much about those things. He spared only a passing glance at the Veterans Center when he first arrived at San Diego State, he said, not sure why he'd ever need it, until he started classes and ran up against GI Bill paperwork, requirements, and other challenges. Oh, that's why, Painter, 25, said he exclaimed to himself at the time. While more than half of veterans in a survey by the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University said they signed up for military service for the education benefits, 60% complained the complexity of VA programs hampered their attempts to stay in school or graduate. 56% said they had inadequate financial resources to stay in college even with GI Bill help. And 28% said their family obligations created a conflict. Veterans who have suffered trauma in particular have trouble adjusting to campus life and have difficulty sleeping and concentrating, new research conducted at community colleges by investigators from the universities of Arkansas and California Riverside found. They said this puts student veterans at higher risk for dropping out of institutions that fail to provide them with support. Contending with the comparatively less disciplined environment of a campus can also be a particular problem for veterans used to being told what to do and when to do it. That study and others have found. You go back to college and all that structure goes away, says Cody Vanderpool, 25, a Marine Corps veteran and mechanical engineering major at Florida State. Veterans also often have to fight with colleges to have their military training and experience converted into academic credit. If they can't, they risk running out of GI Bill money before they earn their degree. forcing them to choose between giving up and paying out of their own pockets. Even when the money's flowing, the GI Bill, which provides up to $21,970 a year towards tuition and fees, plus stipends for housing and books, doesn't cover all of most veterans' costs.
Really quickly before you continue,
Yes, sir.
this is why you're better served. I'm not saying this to be against military service and all, because I think it very much works, but you definitely have to have a plan. And however, my rule of thumb and what I advise every person, because I've talked to a number of black males over the past year who have degrees who are trying to enlist in the military.
That makes no sense. You have a
Yeah.
degree but try to enlist?
And I asked them immediately, why would you do such a silly thing? And most of them are taking the damn ASVAB. They can do well on the ASVAB. Again, this is one of these things where for I can tell you personally, it didn't take me nowhere near that long to get my degree after I got out of school. I mean, excuse me, after I got out of the military. But I will say this much: the GI Bill doesn't cover everything, especially if you're going to a private university. Because, for example, a lot of your Ivy League universities, they love veterans. Like Columbia recruits so many veterans. I know a lot of guys. I know guys right now sending Columbia's pre-med post-baccalaureate program that grants a master's degree, but you're paying like $90,000 a year, and you're using GI Bill. But the problem is GI Bill doesn't cover enough. So they have another program called the Yellow Ribbon Program, which is what the institution you're at and the VA comes together to split the difference of what the GI Bill doesn't cover. And
Right.
so, yeah, the article is spot on, because everything they talk about with veterans fighting for have their military training experience and courses they took in the military converted into academic credit. Yeah, many schools don't like to do that for veterans. I didn't have a problem when I went to the University of Wisconsin. I didn't have that problem, but I know plenty of veterans who went to other schools around the country who had that problem on the regular. But continue.
Well, before we continue, I want to highlight something that I know for a fact this is true not only for veterans, but it's true for a lot of high school students who are simply not prepared for the college life. And that is, where did I read that?
And this is true of veterans, which is why I prefaced this whole discussion about what I did in undergrad, how I was one of the tutors for the Veterans Upward Balance. Because yeah, part of the thing about what they were explaining about, you only get 36 months of support through the GI Bill. Yeah. So basically, once you hit 36 months, it doesn't matter if you did 6 months here, 6 months there, you spread it out over however long. And once you hit 36 months, it's done. That's it. Okay. Now they do have something called the Forever GI Bill now, where I think they give an emergency extension up to 48 months. I think an additional year, but you have to do it before your GI Bill runs out. You have to request it before your GI Bill runs out. Now, if your GI Bill runs out, I don't know if they will give it to you, but they do have something called the Forever GI Bill that allows for an emergent. That part of that allows for an extension, a 1 year extension of GI Bill benefits. But again, if you go even to some of your higher end state schools, 21,000 is not going to cover. And certainly if you're in programs like engineering or something like that, that tend to take 4 to 5 years, you're going to run out of money in most cases. And so what this is really getting at, and what I'm getting at, even with putting up the pay rates and stuff like that, you're better served either going from high school into one of the military academies if you want to become an officer, or you find a way to do well on that ACT, SAT, so you can get a goddamn full scholarship to one of these damn universities, and you can go and then you join the damn ROTC program if you're hell bent on going into the military. Because like me, when I joined, I was in my sophomore year undergrad at the University of Illinois at the time, and I left to join the military. And if I could do it all over again, I would definitely have just stayed where I was at. Okay. Because the other part of what this article was getting at was how veterans have to do, you have to do a lot of back end fighting once you're out of the military to get the GI Bill, to get to do a lot of stuff. And I can tell you that not just from folks that I've known, I've had to do some of that stuff, but yeah, but it's you do a lot of fighting on the back end. And that's really what was the purpose of what I'm trying to get at. And what I won't put it, and this is more or less aimed at the younger. This ain't aimed at the guys that are already veterans or whatever. This is aimed at the young guys that are getting advice for joining the military from dudes. I'm telling you, as a guy who's a combat veteran, I'm a medic. Okay, I was a medic, so you're not just talking to any dude that just qualified for infantry enough. No, I qualified for one of these MOSs where you actually have to score pretty high on this damn ASVAB to get into. I'm telling you, if you don't have a plan, you are screwed.
Well, that's what I wanted to get at because this particular sentence caught my eye. It says contending with the comparatively less disciplined environment of a campus can also be a particular problem for veterans used to being told what to do and when to do it. You go back to college and all that structure goes away.
You know what that screams to me? Institutionalized.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the problem. Again, for a lot of this is what I meant earlier when I said the military has a knack for for attracting guys who are coming from broken homes, broken families, and they themselves may be broken. You know, there was a string of commercials, military commercials, in particular Army commercials, a few years back, where they showed they were talking to teenage males, and so they had a Latino family, a black family, and a white family. Latino family, white family, mother, father, discussing the options of the military with the son. The black family, well, who do they have? Single mother discussing the option with her son. Not a man in sight. And if you were to ask any of the older veterans, don't ask none of these Negroes that are in their 30s and 40s, because them niggas gonna lie to you. Pardon the expression here. Ask the guys that were officers and they're in their 50s and 60s and ask them what they're going to tell you. Ask those guys that, again, a huge percentage of your nurses and your doctors and your scientists, many of them were veterans, okay? As you and I were talking in the back chat before we went live, I was telling you about the story about how I became a tutor doing Veterans Upper Bounds, tutoring veterans coming out of the military, going into a 4-year university. Again, this was at the University of Wisconsin where I was at. And how I got into it because it was a black man who was an Air Force veteran, but he was a retired family practice physician. He wrote one of my letters of recommendation for medical school. Okay. He was also an Air Force pilot. And he ran the Veterans Upper Bounds. And he was also my biochemistry professor. He ran the Veteran Upper Bounds, and he asked me personally to come in to help tutor some of the veterans because a lot of veterans were wasting their damn GI Bill money taking non-college level courses. Math 99, Math 98, English 99. Throwing away GI Bill money on that. That is why I did what I did. So for folks in the chat who think I'm just going after the military, no, I'm not just going after the military or anything like that. No, I'm going after the quality of the recruits. Mm-hmm. If you got problems before you go into the military will exacerbate them. It will make them worse. If you didn't know how to choose a woman before you went to the military, it sure as hell ain't gonna help being in the military. Because now you got a lot more to lose. You got money, you got some benefits, and there's a lot of parasitic women out there that love a sucker in uniform.
Yeah, there's a reason why that term exists. They love a sucker in uniform. And so I'm going to go ahead and continue. So it said a lot of traditional age students who go to school here have a support system behind them where if you fail, you won't end up on the street, says Quinn Molinaro, 26, a former Navy cryptologic technician now studying international business at San Diego State. Kurt Asen, the director of institutional effectiveness at Tidewater Community College in Norfolk, Virginia, whose 3-year graduation rate for GI Bill recipients is 7%, said colleges like his are penalized because student veterans aren't counted if they run out of GI Bill money before they earn degrees, among other reasons. He said nearly 60% of Tidewater student veterans transfer with the intention of finishing somewhere else, with or without having obtained associate's degrees or other credentials. We consider that a success, said Asen, but because they don't graduate from here, they're considered not to have graduated. Most other community colleges with low student veteran success rates did not respond when asked to comment. Those that did said the numbers, which they report directly to the government themselves, were wrong, that they improve when other veterans not receiving GI Bill money are included. Or that what Asen called the VA's intricate requirements make them look worse than they are. Many also said that veterans often transfer without degrees and may finish somewhere else, though this is not yet tracked. The amount of help provided to veterans by colleges that take their money also varies wildly. There's programs like ours, which has 7 full-time staff members advising veterans, said Billy Francis, the director of Florida State's Students Veterans Center, and himself an Air Force veteran. Then you have those that are out there recruiting just to get those GI Bill dollars. The difference in effort often comes down to such things as policies that tie state budget allocations to graduation rates, or understanding that building a reputation for helping veterans can attract more of them at a time of declining enrollment. But whether or not a university provides support is also driven by intangibles such as a campus's location or its leadership. A lot of this has to do with resources, but it's also about institutional commitment from the top, said Nick Armstrong, the director of research at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. On the one hand, you got veterans who are eager to use their education benefits, and on the flip side, you have higher education writ large, and not only 2-year schools, with really a lack of leadership being willing to provide that kind of support. The president of Florida State is a decorated Vietnam War veteran, for instance. San Diego State is in a city with a major Navy port and Marine and Coast Guard bases, where military aircraft constantly crisscross the Southern California sky. Faculty members who are veterans hang signs that read Military Ally on their doors, offering help to veterans who need it. There's a lot of people you can reach out to, Painter said. By comparison, the first university Sky Musin attended when she got out of the Coast Guard was definitely not equipped to help her or the many veterans it had recruited, she said. You're talking about a summer class that's 8 weeks long, and they're coming to you in the 7th week saying, you filled out this form, but fill it out again. And that's a more common experience, said Musin, 28, who is now in law school at Florida State and plans a career providing legal outreach to fellow veterans. The campus that get it right, says Leon, are the ones that look at the student veteran population as non-traditional students. It starts with the efforts to recruit, and there's also a Veterans Resource Office, a Veterans Center, a Veterans Lounge, a Campus Veteran Success Center. Adrian Sanchez looked for services like those at other universities before deciding on San Diego State, where he majors in international security, and found nothing to the extent that we have here, he said. A former Army intelligence analyst hanging out on an afternoon in a two-story veteran's house, which also has a game room, a laundry, and a cookout area. Sanchez, who is 28 and the father of a 2 year old, is scheduled to graduate in May and then go back into the Army as a second lieutenant. He said he was impressed to be
Sounds like he
invited.
did that green and gold program, but go ahead.
Okay. He said he was impressed to be invited once to speak with faculty about the way they communicate with veterans. Instructors here are more receptive to how they talk to the student veterans. That they're talking to a 24-year-old, said Sanchez, and not an 18-year-old kid. So that's the end of that article. But again, I think it makes it pretty clear. And in fact, Isaac said it best. There's no point in going unless it's your only option. Pretty much, if you already have a chance to go to a 4 year school and get that degree, just go ahead and do so. To me, the whole going enlisted because you need structure or going enlisted because you can make a career out of it, so far, that's
Bunk. It
yeah.
is bunk. Look, the calculator, the military compensation calculator, this is the militarypaid.defense.gov website. This is an official government website. Okay? So Dr. Phoenix and Sigma Jones didn't come up with this. Okay? This is straight out of the DOD's this is their stuff, okay? This is their information. I didn't come up with this. We did not come up with this, okay? And I am telling you, I was fortunate because I got lucky because I met some folks who, because one, I was in a very military friendly state at a very military friendly institution. Anyone that's in the Midwest know that if you want to take advantage of being in the military, you take your ass to Wisconsin. I would stay away from Illinois, but Wisconsin is the place to be. Again, went to one of the best state schools in the country, okay? But because I was able to get in, I was able to meet a lot of military folks there who they themselves were, or many of them had PhDs, doctors and stuff. They helped to bring me along. They helped to mentor me. And again, I already was working with a pretty good base because unlike many veterans, I did not have to take those, and I have to take those pre-college courses, if you will. I didn't have to do none of that. So for me, I was able to go straight into what I wanted to do, and it was there where I became a scholar. I did research, did a whole bunch of stuff. So even though I did start undergrad a few years later than typically students would, at the end of the day, I still outperformed most of my peers because, again, that's really a time investment. College is a time investment, just like anything else. Mm-hmm. It's basically what you get in is what you get out of is what you put in. So if you invest the time in, you're gonna do well. You're gonna get the degree you need. And truth be told, nothing is gonna ever take away. Nothing's ever gonna substitute for the fact that this is about being prepared. And if you have Black males that are coming out here into the world and you aren't prepared, you can't just say, oh, the school didn't do this. No, you better go slap that heifer of your mother upside the head and ask that heifer how the hell she let you get to be 17 years old and you can barely read or put an essay together.
Right.
You better go slap that bummy ass daddy of yours and ask that Negro why the hell he didn't do what he needed to do. Because at the end of the day, Black males don't grow up to be 18-year-old young adult that are ill prepared for the world around them without the parents having the greatest effect on that. They are the reason why. And as much as we can sit here and blame it on external circumstances or whatever, the principal contributor to why Black males aren't prepared for the world out here is because of where you came from. Your parents. If your parents were losers, you're most likely gonna be a goddamn loser. Unless you're
And, and,
willing to fight to not be one.
and you know what, Dr. Fierce, I want to mention this too. Because you got some people that will point out, oh, look at Bill Gates. Look at Elon Musk. Bill Gates was a college dropout, and Elon Musk didn't even go to college. Well, first and foremost, they still had something in their early life that a lot of black men lack, and that is they came from a two-parent household.
Do people
So,
understand what Bill Gates folks did? Do people understand what Mark Zuckerberg did? He dropped out of Harvard. Do anybody know what Mark Zuckerberg's parents did? You know, his father was a dentist who gave him $250,000 seed money for Facebook.
mm-hmm,
He came from a family of medical doctors and dentists.
mm-hmm.
This is where. Go ahead, please continue, because I
Oh
don't
no,
want
I'm
to.
just saying. I'm just saying that. Okay, so you look at these guys, like you said, like Bill Gates, like Elon Musk, like Mark Zuckerberg, and you're thinking, oh well, if they could do it, then I should be able to do it too. And it's like, no, they had, they still had structure in their life, but also they came from backgrounds that still made them possible to become entrepreneurs. And like you said, most of them actually came from families that were well established in society. So black men on average don't have that luxury.
Okay, so this is where I start to get really annoyed. At the end of the day, yes, I had people that helped me out, and that's true of anybody. You don't go through
Mm-hmm.
anything in this world alone, okay? You don't get to where you get to be alone. There's no such thing as a self-built person. Someone or people or a system or a network helped you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is black men seem to have this disposition where they refuse to put the blame where most of the blame belongs. The blame belongs on your folks.
Yep.
If your mother was some slutty ass whore that half the block laid on her ass, hey, well, she popped you out 9 months later. Damn, what the hell did she do for you? If your daddy was just some Negro around the way sleeping with a bunch of women here and there, was a quote rolling stone, had multiple babies here and there, what were you? What number were you in this process? You can't sit here and knowing damn well your folks didn't do nothing for you. They didn't help you to do anything and then expect you to just act like you're supposed to forget that. You're just supposed to ignore that. When your competition out here, they're getting started. I was in Chicago over the summer, and we were talking about this in some of our conversations over the past few months between you and Logic's Finest and a couple other folks. And I was talking about, yeah, and you go to Chicago, that's my hometown. I'm from Chicago. I used to live in some of the most expensive areas of Chicago. Lincoln Park, Gold Coast, all of that. Yeah, I used to live in those areas. And I'm telling you, you go there, you go see 24-year-olds driving brand new Teslas, 24-year-old trust fund babies driving brand new Aventadors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This is what's going on. This is what happens when you fail to plan and you plan to fail. You send children out here into the world with no concept of who the hell they are or what the hell their purpose is. You send boys out here with no purpose. And yes, most of these cats cannot be mentored. I said it. Yes, most of them can't be mentored. They have too many schisms. They're too emotionally and mentally unstable. You can't mentor that. I don't have that kind of time. There is no professional out here that has that kind of time.
No.
And
Just
I'm
like
not
I
saying you write off a whole generation, but hey, you better think about yourself first.
exactly. Just like I mentioned in the previous stream, and this is just me, but if you reach the age of 20 and you have no clue in regards to what you want to accomplish in life, how you go about it, and especially having people skills, soft skills to make things happen, I'm sorry. You your own worst enemy. I have no interest in trying to help you figure out how to get your life in order.
No amount of military service is going to replace putting the time and the work in. Okay. I'm not saying the military doesn't work for certain folks, but if you go do the military, goddamn, we just put up the hard numbers. You see the clear discrepancies in pay between enlisted and officer ranks.
Mm-hmm.
And these were even the most senior of ranks. Okay? You're seeing a 2 to damn near 3 times difference in pay between an E6 and an O5 with similar time in service. Same zip code. Family single, family of 4. Okay? I mean, I don't know how much more information black men need. If it's sitting right here in front of your face, this is a government website, this is a DOD website, and they're telling you what it is. Then what that means? That means that, do you realize that only about 6% of the officer corps in the military is black?
Wow.
I had articles I was gonna send you. I had like a stack of, like, if Sigma Jones would tell you, I had like a stack of like 12 articles. I had to narrow it down because we would have never got through all of this. Not even in the 3 hours we've been doing this. And you know what? It's so difficult to find information based on based on graduation rates for veterans, because yes, much of that is not reported. And there's a reason it's not reported, because yes, I am telling you, as a person who used to tutor veterans in undergrad, yeah, many veterans don't make it out of undergrad. Most of them don't. At rates, and it's funny, you see similar graduation rates for veterans as you do for black students in undergrad. You have about 1 in every 6 black students graduate within a 6 to 8 year period. About the same for veterans. So this is across the board. So yeah, you will see the things you see mirrored among veterans. Yeah, they're mirrored among black people as a group. Why? Because many of your veterans are black. They come from the things the reasons that black students are trying to go to college for whatever they're trying to escape from. You're replacing that with the military, and I'm telling you, you're not going to escape it. The best way for you to escape it is for black men to get some goddamn compunction, stop being cowards, and start thinking about your damn self. Put the damn time in and stop listening to some dumb niggas on the internet telling you about join the military if you done screwed up your damn life. If you done screwed up your life at 19, 20 years old and had a child or two, yeah, I'm sorry to tell you, you go in the military, you go screw it up some more. You go have more kids. Why do you think so many black men who do stay in 20 years, why do you think they stayed in 20 years? Because many of them had out of wedlock babies. You ain't got nothing else you go do in your life, so you might as well do your damn 20 years, retire as an E6, even though it's virtually worthless. Hell, you got the base pay. The base pay for E6 20 years in was 51,000. There is not a student I know that graduated undergrad with me that came out was making at least 7 at 20, 20, 21, 22, 23 years old. Okay? I know folks right now that are 20, barely in their mid-20s, they're already making 200 grand. You're sitting here as an E3, E4, 23, 24 years old, making what? 2 grand a month, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Let's stop BSing yourselves here, because black males are good for BSing themselves. This isn't about who has what over who. This is strictly a function of where the hell you came from. And until black men start being realistic about where the hell you came from, who the hell is responsible for where you're at, we can say all we want. This is external forces, external circumstances. We can say it's white supremacy. Yes, we can. We can certainly, there are certainly things that can be chalked up to that, but you're not being prepared for the world out here. You not being prepared for college. You not even being able to be prepared to even take a college entrance exam, the ACT, the SAT. That is on your parents.
Yep.
And I can tell you stories of kids that when I used to tutor for ACT and SAT prep in these high school, I got kids, I tell them to write me an essay, a kid write me write me 2 paragraphs and say that's an essay. And then if you read the 2 paragraphs, run-on sentences, misspelled words, numerous grammatical errors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And again, and you're gonna carry that same attitude, that same level of performance. You had it then, you're gonna carry that. Very few guys who go into the military who come from these backgrounds very much escape it. Okay? Very few. The ones that do, they do exceptionally well. But they are the outliers. They are a small percentage. And if any black male that's a veteran will sit here and tell you, I got out and they told you, yeah, they didn't have to deal with no BS as a veteran, they're lying to you. I am telling you, if you're gonna do the military thing, you better do it the right way, which means get your ass into college first, get them to pay for it, and then you go commission. Or you do well on the ACT, SAT, then you apply to West Point or one of these military academies, okay? Because if folks don't know, the military also has its own medical school. The Uniform Health Services, Uniform Health Services, something is in Maryland. Is right across the street from the NIH. Okay, that whole little area in Bethesda, Maryland. Yeah, that's what the military's medical school is at. It's not, in fact, a lot of folks who are NIH researchers, many of them came out of the military. But again, so the military, contrary to popular belief, the military rewards you more for being educated than it does for not being educated.
And you know something, and I mentioned this behind the scenes, Dr. Fetus, but I'll mention it here. I had 3 granduncles. They're all deceased, but I had 3 granduncles who served in World War II. All of them in the Navy. And I never forget when I graduated in 2010, and I asked them as far as my interest in the military, how would I go about it? All 3 of them unanimously said, go to college first, get your degree, and then go into the military. Keep in mind, these were 3 gentlemen that, circumstances wise, they wasn't able to go to college. And one can make the argument that back then it was pretty difficult for black people to get in college before affirmative action, if you want to say give or take. But it just amazes me that all 3 of these men, I mean, they live in separate states, but all 3 unanimously said, go to college first. Go to college, get your degree, and then looking to get in the military. That showed me right then and there that they understood the value of education. They understood that had they had that opportunity to go into college, to do that themselves, they would have done it.
Look, like I said before, if you talk to the older veterans, generally your folks in their 50s and older, they're going to be honest with you. I have not met one yet that didn't tell a young person considering military service to ever become enlisted. They all say the same thing: go become an officer. If you want to do this, become an officer. Because anyone that's ever been through the enlisted ranks, they will tell you it is it is garbage. You're gonna deal with a lot of BS. You go, you're gonna deal with a lot of politics and bureaucracy. And again, there was so much data that I had here that we didn't get a chance to cover, but maybe we might cover it in another segment. But I do want to say, for the most part here, that at the end, that ultimately for black men here, the problem is, and the reason why I wanted to do this, because yeah, there is so much misinformation about what military service is and what it isn't, and who benefits from it. And this and everything I put up, this is stuff straight from the DOD. This is stuff straight from the VA, which is part of the DOD. This is stuff straight from the government, okay? Dr. Phoenix, Sigma Jones didn't make this data up. This is what it is. And at the end, and ultimately for black men are gonna have to decide, what is life gonna look like for you in the next 40 or 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, the trajectory that black men are on, hey, I can tell you right now, if you're in these major cities, there's a nice little spot on the sidewalk for you.
Right. Right.
Keep in mind, most about more than a third of your homeless are veterans. That's not by accident.
And honestly, William, life is not really complicated. We make it complicated by how we put our output. There's an old saying: life is about 1% of things that's outside of your control. The other 99% is how you respond. So I don't believe life is more complicated than what folks admit.
No, life is about choices. And simply put, you either make the right choices or you make the wrong choices. You make the wrong choices in women, you end up spending a lifetime paying for it. You make the wrong choices in what you do in life, you will pay for a lifetime. And for men, and black men especially, if you truly make the wrong choices, hey, you better hope you're in a nice. You better hope you're in the South for the winter months, because it's gonna be real cold. It's gonna be real frosty sleeping in the Midwest and the northern states as a homeless veteran or as a homeless black male. Period.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from my own personal experience as an undergrad, having been a nurse before I even applied to medical school, having got a bachelor's degree in nursing and biochemistry, I am telling you, I spent a lot of my time going out here dealing with homeless black males, giving them the care that nobody didn't give a damn about. Because nobody don't give a damn about a homeless black male.
Nope.
No
Not
one.
at all.
Not even other black males. Very few of us actually give a damn about what the hell happens with homeless black men out here. And I used to go out here and give my services for free. Never asked for a penny, never asked for a dollar. I ain't trying to sell. I've never tried to sell anybody no bullshit. And please pardon the language, because part of what gets me really animated about this and really annoyed is just really the level of disingenuousness and the level and pathological liars that are out here on the internet that are having you believing that you can somehow screw your life up and the military will fix it and make it all right. And I am telling you, that will never happen. The military was never designed for that. It is not a jobs program. It does not get your life on the right track program. It is what it is. Because you best believe, as I said earlier, Uncle Sam will get what he wants out of you. Why do you think they like you young? Because they want to break your body. You ever met a military? Anyone knows anyone in the military? Maybe you might have been in the military. Ever met how many service members you done met need knee replacements at 25? Got
Yeah.
got severe nerve damage, sciatica at 25, 26. Folks' bodies are broken down before they even hit 30. I did my time. I had a plan. I did my time, and I got the hell out. And I used it. And here's the funny part about military benefits. most of the benefits you can get, you don't even need to do 20 years. You can do 4 or 5 years as part of your primary enlistment and get the hell out, serve the rest as in the inactive reserves, and get 90% of what you can get with 20 years, without the 20 years, excuse me. So ultimately, what I want the takeaway here be is that for black males, hey, it's time for black males to start realizing there is no substitute for time and effort. The military isn't a substitute. The only effort you're gonna have is what you believe in yourself. Stop looking for some damn women to save you. Stop, because I know for a lot of Negroes that might hear this, it might not sound right coming from a black man's mouth. It might sound better coming from a female's mouth.
That's true.
Because most black men ain't used to hearing a black man really just tell you straight up and down what the hell the deal is. That's why you get so many people who are reactive in the chats.
Yeah.
Because you're not used to hearing a black man just come on here and telling you the real. Because if any black man actually gave a damn about the black man, they would tell you the real. Negroes out here telling you you can be all you can be in the military. Keep believing that bull crap. You got cold hard data right here that proves that, yeah, if you don't take a particular pathway in the military, you're screwed. 20 years, as far as I'm concerned, you did 20 years and you got it as an E6, you're a failure. Hell, I made more money my first 3 years out of the military than I did in my entire 5. Well, I take that back. My first year out of the military than I did in my entire 5.5 years I did it.
And before we end, check it for you. You make a great point. You can get a degree in a highly competitive area such as STEM. However, keep in mind, you still need a competitive advantage over your competition. And this is where people skills come in. If you don't know how to network in college and actually connect with the right people, then yeah, you will be at a disadvantage even with a STEM degree.
Okay, see, here's the problem. Again, there's this progressive laziness among black males. There is no self-taught method that's going to get you what you want. If you go look at all these folks on YouTube, because there's a bunch of folks on YouTube, you go look up how to code and all that, code for yourself and all this stuff. Yeah. If you really listen to these folks, they tell you what they only give you half the story, because if you really listen to them, they really break it down what they really had to do. Anyone in tech is sitting here telling you all you got to do is pick up a certificate and learn how to code with no proof of you can actually do it, no projects, no nothing. And even then, even if you can furnish that without no degree, all you think you go do is get an entry-level job. It ain't gonna pay you $100,000, I tell you that. If you could get one that pay you $100,000, oh, you better be above average. You better be in the top 5% of their candidates. But if you talk to the recruiters, damn what the Negroes are telling you, and damn what a lot of these other folks on YouTube are telling you, go talk to those folks, what they'll tell you. Yeah, the moment they got a graduate degree, it changed the game for them. Now you got Google looking at you. There's something in tech called FAANG, FAANG. Basically, it stands for Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. So those are the most desirable companies for folks in tech to work at because they pay the most. The average starting salary at Facebook is about $180,000. The average starting salary at Google is roughly about the same, maybe a little less. And so on and so forth. Okay? You think someone's about to hand you a damn near $200,000 a year job because you learned how to code with a 4-hour video on YouTube? You really think somebody's about to hand you a $200,000 a year job? 4 years is a long time. How long do you think you go spend building up that skill level? How long do Negroes really think they're going to spend? You're not considered an expert at anything until you spent at least 10,000 hours in something. Why do you think your average doctor spends more than 6,000 hours a year working as a resident?
Yep.
because they want to make sure when we send your ass out here on your own, you ain't gonna go off and kill somebody. If Negroes really believe somebody's gonna hand you a $200,000, $150,000 a year job on just some I'm self taught. That's it. All you gotta go do self taught. If it was really that simple, you wouldn't be seeing folks putting it up on YouTube.
Exactly. Well, shout out to Eisen. Thank you for the Cash App donation. Really appreciating everything. But wow, we really, I think we really hit the message home. And so before we close out this last culture bomb for 2021, um, Dr. Phoenix, sir, you definitely have the floor again. But I know, I know
Look,
you definitely got more down the pipe.
look, I'm just gonna say this because I mean, there's this pervasive attitude. Look, at the end of the day, ain't nobody giving you. I don't care what the hell you do. I don't care if you're in tech, healthcare, whatever. Nobody ain't just handing you a six-figure salary for nothing. Why do you think you have to go through so much in healthcare? You have to go through schooling. You have to go through the actual training, the clinical training itself. You have to get certified. You have to take exams, high risk, high stakes exams. Basically, if you fail, you just screwed off X amount of years of your life. Why do you think they do that? Because there has to be some assurance that we're not sending idiots out into the world. Okay. And it's true of that. Most folks talking about tech and code and all this stuff. Do Negroes realize the level of math you need to know? You ain't gonna teach yourself math if you can't do basic algebra. You're not gonna teach yourself linear algebra if you can't do basic algebra, if you can't solve a system of equations where you're solving for more than one variable, if you can't do line slope intercept, if you can't factor out an equation, you can't factor out a quadratic. So how the hell you think you're gonna do calculus? Hmm? How the hell you think you're gonna do calculus too? Linear algebra. Hmm? How you think you go? How you gonna ever become an engineer? There's a whole subset of chemistry called physical chemistry, which is concerned mostly with the separation of substances based on physical properties. Do you know what that means? That means that physical properties are based on what? Physics, math, where all you do is calculate ways to separate substances, not based on their chemical properties, but their physical properties. Okay? Requires some math at some of the highest orders. If you want to go get a PhD, what do you think you learn in the PhD program? Depending on your PhD program, you're going to learn how to do some very high level statistics, the kind of statistics that use to correlate data and create the data that we were reading off tonight on these charts. Because anybody that's ever taken statistics at a grad level will tell you, yeah, it's calculus based. Linear regression in statistics is another form of y equals mx plus b, also known as the slope line intercept. Something you learn in basic high school algebra. Mm-hmm. So what I'm getting at here, all of these build on each other. So if you walked out of high school not knowing this, you're not going to walk into a college. You sure as hell not going to walk into the military. You're not going to walk into anything self-taught without putting in an extreme amount of time. And nothing will ever take away time and effort. Nothing. So thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, brother. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, Doc. You're always welcome anytime. And again, there's definitely going to be more going into 2022 because it has to be said. And I'm to the point now where my mentality now is sink or swim when it comes down to black men. As much as a part of me would like to be helpful. I've already come to the conclusion that there's some things you simply cannot be able to teach somebody who do not have the mindset to begin with. Just simply that. So either you either you have it or you don't. That's just how I see it. Either you have it or you don't. If you have it, then hey, we'll point you in the right directions and let you be able to spread your wings and get going. But if you don't have it, hey, you're on your own. And that's just my mentality. Time is of the essence. And it is one thing I know for a fact a lot of black men, both young and old, don't know how to do even from a young age is time management. It really is something that I see a lot from black men is they waste a lot of time on resources, people, and any other type of activities that doesn't benefit them in the long run. And so all I can tell you is come 2022, the information is out there. What you do with it is of your business. But don't come complaining to us if you're struggling to better yourself. Because you've been forewarned. You've been, told where to go and what to do. It all comes down to you. And it also comes down to what background set you up for success or set you up for failure. So, with that said, I'm Sigma Jones. This here is Dr. Phoenix, my co-host. Thanks for tuning in to A Culture Bomb. Until next time.